All right, and we are live. Thank you all for joining me tonight for another episode of The Movies That Made Us. I've got a couple of great guests here that I'm going to bring on shortly, and then we will dive into the show. First, let me do some shout outs here. We've got Art the Clown with us tonight. We've got Redbeard, Kevin Morrison. We got Twisted Trucker, Scratch Burno, got Jimmy here, Sin Jin, Astro Juicy's with us over on Twitter. We got my buddy Swaggy here, Caleb, Adam, Horror Orman is here, Frightful Films. We got Dave here, Saturn Video, RJ. Thank you all for being here. Glad to hear that y'all are excited for this show. So if you missed out on the last episode of The Movies That Made Us, basically what this is all about is to bring on some fellow YouTubers and basically just pick their brains about the movies that made them love movies and the movies that made them want to share their love of movies on the internet. And then the second half of the stream is to sort of talk about our YouTube journeys and to impart some, maybe some wisdom or some encouragement on anybody out there who is thinking about getting into the grind. So, but here we go. My first guest tonight is somebody who has been on the platform almost as long as I have, a real OG when it comes to YouTube, and that is Matt Ramboraph. How you doing tonight, sir?
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for inviting me. Very courteous of you. I find it funny that opening was like this horror music, but it's like eating hot dogs and Pepsi. It's like, yeah, if you eat Pepsi and hot dogs, you probably are going to die.
Well, there's, cholesterol is its own horror movie. Obesity is its own horror movie. So, but yeah, thanks for taking the time out to do this, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if people out there are familiar with my channel, I'm sure they're also familiar with your channel, and probably vice versa. We've collaborated on a few things in the past, and it's always been a pleasure.
Yeah, a long way from the sausage factory, and hello there to the chat. I'm not going to be as cursive today for the channel, but if you want the Andrew Dice Clay version, my channel is usually done for that. But I always think of someone's YouTube channel as their home. You don't go in and wreck their home with the way YouTube is. So hello to the chat, and thank you for having me on here. So I appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, that's yeah, I appreciate that. Very courteous of you, Matt. But you're a courteous gentleman. So I knew that going in.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But like I was saying to you before we started, I mean, you've been on the platform a long time. You've seen a lot of changes. You've lived through a couple of different adpocalypses. We've seen I was going to say the implementation of Google Plus, but really, I mean, it was an invasion. We've seen changes on the platform, both good and bad. So, you've got a lot of wisdom to impart, I think.
Maybe a little.
But thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Also joining me tonight is someone who has had a lot of success on this platform. He has well over 100. He's got 150,000 plus subscribers. He's known as the Danny McBride of YouTube, and that's Cody Leach. How you doing tonight, Cody?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate the invite. And by the way, this was not planned, but I just noticed whenever I was watching you guys talk that great minds think alike.
Oh, yes.
So,
yes.
There we go.
Well, that's a movie that had a huge impact on my life. So I'm wearing the shirt for a couple of reasons, and I'm sure it did on you as well. So
of course, yes.
Yeah, but thank you for taking the time out to be. I know you're a super busy man. You're always on the grind. We talked about the grind a little bit before we went live, so we'll talk about it some more, I'm sure. But thanks, man.
Never stops, no problem.
Yeah, never stops. You were actually working on a video before you jumped on here, so
it is uploading as we speak, and as soon as we are off, then I have to do all the fancy, titles and descriptions and all that other stuff. So yeah. Sandwiched right in between everything.
It never ends, man. It never ends.
Mm-hmm.
But so I do appreciate you taking the time out to hop on here and do this. It's a lot of people seemed excited. They were like, hey, Piz and Cody are going to do something together. That's cool. So
that's right.
Yeah, right on. Well, let's just dive right in. I mean, let's talk about some movies that really had an impact on our lives growing up. Movies, the movies that made us love movies. And let me start actually with you, Cody. What's sort of the earliest movie memory that you have?
Well, this is one that I tried to really approach this list differently. So when you ask me, like, think of movies that really shaped your movie taste as well as like that made you want to share your love for movies, I tried to approach this differently than I typically do. Like, it would end up being just my favorite movies. So this one is one that I have talked about a ton on my channel, though, and it's Child's Play 3, which is the movie that got me into horror, and quite literally is the reason why I'm even worth talking to today on this live stream. So Child's Play 3 is a movie where and it might actually be my earliest movie memory that's as vivid as it is, because I remember walking into our apartment. I was with my mom. I remember opening the door and looking to the right, and my dad was sitting down watching something, and it had just started. All I saw was the words Child's Play 3 as it kind of like swirled into this molten little blood plastic thing. And then I was like, what is this? And I was only 4 years old. And so I sat down and just, I don't know if I really sat and watched the whole thing or if I just kept coming back to it, but I was just like, what is this? Like, this is gnarly. This little doll's killing people and, knocking people out with golf clubs and swearing left and right. Where are these movies been? And so quite literally from that day, like, I was changed, where I of course had seen plenty of movies, and some probably a little bit more mature than others, but that was the first time that I had dove into horror. And then suddenly it was like, how many of these Chucky movies do we have, and give them to me now? Immediately it was like my gateway drug into Nightmare on Elm Street, and same story. Like, how many of these do we have? I'm watching all of them. And it was extremely awkward for my dad, who was basically a single parent. And so I actually was in a Christian private school at the time. I was only there until second grade, but a very strange upbringing, strange setting to be in for a kid that's watching dolls mutilate people. And so it was always this thing where my dad's like, you can watch it, but don't tell anybody. And I was one of the kids that was smart enough not to go and to tell everybody at school. So it really shaped me into not only just being in love with horror, but just first time I remember seeing something and going, I need more of this. Where's the rest?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You mentioned Child's Play 3. The original Child's Play for me was kind of was a big movie. That was one that I rented all the time, particularly with a buddy of mine, and we just loved how mean as hell Chucky was. And like you said, he cursed, he just did awful, and we thought that was so funny. We were two little kids watching this doll torment this other little kid while he was massacring these adults, and we would have the time of our lives watching that thing. We rented it all the time.
Yep, I was obsessed with 3. For whatever reason, we didn't have 2, but I knew 2 was awesome either by seeing it on TV or we rented it once. And I was, back in the day, you'd rent the movie and then you would tape your own copy of it.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
That was how I kind of like built my collection after a while. It was like, okay, which ones are we missing? We're missing 2. We got to rent 2. And then I didn't see 1 for a long time. It seems weird to people that grew up in today's generation that have Netflix and Amazon. Like, everything is literally available in a click. Where when I grew up, my library, my movie upbringing, if you will, was limited to whatever tapes Dad had. And sometimes he would have whole franchises, and sometimes it would be like a puzzle box. I had Phantasm 2 for a decade before I think I saw Phantasm 1. So it was very funny how I kind of had to like do this really weird scattershot journey through horror with whatever my dad had.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough that, like, my little town, we didn't have a movie theater here, but we had, like, at any given time, at least 2, if not 3 active ma and pa video stores. So I had a lot to sort of explore, and in the beginning what my mother would approve for me to explore. So, but yeah. Rambo, what's your earliest movie memory?
Well, first I want to say I always thought Child's Play 3 was underrated. I always liked that film.
Wholeheartedly agree. It drives me nuts how the specific things that people hail against it. I'm like, that happened in Child's Play 2. Why does it suck here? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that even a supporting character, was his name Whitehurst?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whitehurst, yeah.
That I feel bad when he makes a heroic save on the grenade. I mean, okay, this movie's working on some level. That, usually in a movie you wouldn't care, it's another death scene. But I really felt sorry for that poor some bitch. He can't get a break, and literally his innards break now. That's the only break he got. His guts exploded. So, but you said earliest memory. It's hard. It was hard for me to. I just to set up. I was born in Iowa, in the middle of nowhere on farmland, and literally the two towns you could probably pass in 30 seconds. There's like a gas station, a little grocery store, a factory, a park, school, and a bunch of houses. That's it. So it's whatever we did with our two VCRs. You put the tape on it and you copy, and it's like, I know you're not supposed to do it, but as long as we're not selling it.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
But I sure thought I'd be rich today. But I would say, honestly, like one of the things that I grew up with that made me love films was action and monster movies. The 80s, 90s action monster movies, either a combination of the two or one or the other. And one that popped up that these type of films were my comic book movies. Were comic book movies very adamant today? These are I don't want to say my generation, but my own personal comic book movies. It was films like this, Rambo First Blood Part 2. Because as unrealistic as it is, I don't know many people would see fork-tipped explosive arrows in their back pocket, but man, I loved every minute of it. And just almost like as a kid living vicariously through these high adventures of just excitement and thrills and everything done in camera and taking it seriously at the same time. That even though the comic book type films were, yes, you could pick holes in realism, they're so much fun. They're so entertaining. And since I was a kid to this day, I could watch so many of those movies endlessly throughout the years. And so that was my early memory is didn't get to read a lot of comic books, but lived them through watching these type of films, which is, it wasn't much to do in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. It's like, okay, we had 4 channels. For some reason, 2 CBS. I don't know why. One wasn't good enough. So 2 CBS, ABC, and PBS. At PBS, I'm like, I don't care about Doctor Who. I'm sorry, Doctor Who fans. As a kid, I didn't get it. I just remember the vortex that creeped me out. And then I moved on to like Home Improvement or something. But yeah, I would say the films like that really started it.
I mean, I can relate to you. Not that, I mean, not that I lived in the middle of nowhere, but I mean, it was a small town. There wasn't a whole lot to do. So, a lot of the time was spent sort of escaping the small town through, mostly for me, it was horror. But, when you could combine the action and the Monster Squad was something I rented all the time. So that movie lived in my mind for a long time. And of course, you use your imagination and, I'm in the backyard with a stick and I'm driving it through Dracula's heart. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Poor neighbor kids down on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I can definitely feel you there. Yeah, for sure. Was there a movie that, I talk about, and people familiar with my channel, probably sick of hearing this story, but True Romance was a huge movie for me because that was the movie that made me realize that movies can be more than just entertainment. Like I just remember being hit on all sides by this movie. Like somebody wrote this awesome dialogue. Like these performances, these actors are so good. Like, this director, he has a visual style, all his own. Like it opened my eyes to really the talent that goes on behind the scenes to make these movies happen. And I'd seen Tony Scott movies before, and I'd seen like, Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken and other stuff, but I really didn't, I think, recognize like, damn, they're so good. So that's the movie that really opened my eyes to like, okay, there's more to movies than just entertainment. Was there a movie like that for you, Cody?
More than just entertainment. So I mean, I've had a ton of them. I should prepare a little bit better for that one. Put me on the spot. So, like, I mean, I approach all movies where entertainment's always kind of the first thing. But when I started to get into, I'd say probably my teenage years, I started to dive into it a bit, and then more so whenever I was in like my early 20s, where I really started to kind of look for other things other than entertainment. I think for the longest time, it was just like what movie looks cool, what movie sounds cool. And then eventually I started to get into where really where my taste kind of started to branch off from my upbringing. Like for the longest time, it was like whatever movie dad said was cool, take it to the bank. It's probably cool. Go check that out. If dad said the movie sucks, don't bother with it. And so when I started to get into, I'll say like, I think Signs was the first movie, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, where I went to go see it. And I actually remember coming home with my parents, and both of them kind of agreed. They were like, eh, and I loved it. And it was the first time where I had like this crisis where I'm like, wait a minute, like they didn't like it, but I liked it. Is that allowed? Like I was 12 years old at the time, I think. And I think that was the first time when I realized like, okay, like, thank you, Dad, for, setting me up and giving me all the bedrock of my movie taste, but it's time to branch off, And so, I think from that point on, I started to get a little bit more bold where I would look for movies that weren't necessarily family agreement. It wasn't something that everybody just wanted to check out because it was cool or it was a big franchise film, and started to look at more independent stuff, or started to research actual directors and things that they've done in the past, and not just the big sequels. And so I think that's one, if I'm going to go through like a timeline of things that shaped my taste, was one that where I really was like, oh, okay, I'm allowed to like things that other people don't. And things will hit me differently than they'll hit them. And then starting to kind of dive into why.
Yeah, right on. What about you, Rainbow?
Well, when you mentioned there were two films, when I was fairly young, one I found out, weirdly enough, I was watching the VHS of Dolph Lundgren's The Punisher, and the trailer for this was on. It was called Jacob's Ladder. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, okay, it's a horror film, and I love, there's maybe some creatures in it. Like the trailers at times kind of vague, but then you really get this heartfelt story of a man who is going through this crisis without giving it away, that has to make his peace. From Dan Aiello's character, the chiropractic, and his whole speech, which just settles the whole movie for me, to the amazing performance by Tim Robbins, which I still think he was robbed of some kind of nomination or something, to the very heartfelt score. Usually, yeah, I love entertainment and movies, but that one really made me feel something, not just creepy with the atmosphere and a lot of the creepy visuals, the head shaking, all that, but just a heartfelt story of this guy that you just sincerely felt sorry for, like every step of the way. And then when you find out what's going on, it makes you think about what happens in life, and do you have regrets? Is it something that you can make peace with yourself, live life to its fullest? Like all that stuff that, even for a younger guy, was, I wouldn't say a lot to tape. It was something to think about. It was something to give pause to. And to this day, I love, please, people, do avoid the remake. I'm not the remake Jacob's Ladder. Please avoid it. Please do it. Like The Plague or Seven Plagues. The 1990 Jacob's Ladder is to be a phenomenal film that was one of the inspirations, I guess, for when they made the Silent Hill games later on. But yeah, the other film, which may think it's weird at first, but it was a film called Uncommon Valor. Because at first it's like an action film. It's going back to get the Vietnam POWs, but you look at the cast of Gene Hackman, Patrick Swayze, Red Brown, Tim Thomerson. And when you get to the third act, just how heartfelt that is without giving away, it really gives you such a genuine emotion that I've recommended that to a couple people, and each time I recommend it, they get teary-eyed by the end. Just because of how effective the performances were, And while, yeah, if you really make it that you really like these characters and you do certain things the right way, you can take what's essentially just an action film, but really make it more of a movie, more of a memorable experience.
Hmm.
And that idea, without giving away the final shot and the implications because of what some of the characters went through, and I say very heartfelt. That's the best word I could come up with, and that really stuck in my mind as well when you mentioned that criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. Jacob's Ladder in particular. I mean, that's one that definitely sticks with you. I think that might have been the first like big twist movie I remember seeing, like at the end, like, oh wow, like I didn't see that totally kind of, pulled the rug out from under me on that one.
My funny memory with that movie, I was way too young to understand the context of what was going on in Jacob's Ladder. All I knew was just like that kind of stuff going on. And what I used to pop that movie in when I wanted to see. I wasn't in the mood for a kids movie, but I wanted to see Macaulay Culkin for the 90 seconds he's in that movie.
Right.
It's funny as an adult looking back on it. I'm like, man, I just sat through a bunch of demented stuff for just to see that little kid for a couple little flashbacks, and then he gets creamed.
Well, Cody, you and I, we do, we're known for horror, right? And Rambo, I mean, you do quite a lot of horror too, but I think you kind of, action, horror, sci-fi, you kind of cover a little bit more. But I think most people know us as horror guys. Cody, I know you said Child's Play 3 was would you say that was like that was the movie that sort of opened you up to the genre, or was there another horror movie that really kind of opened you up to the genre?
Child's Play 3 was what kicked the door open, and then I just ran inside and never came back out. I mean, it's we went from the Child's Play movies, of which we only had 3 at the time, and I had to kind of get my dad to build a collection. Then I got into Freddy, and then Freddy totally took over, where I was just Nightmare 1 through 4 in random order whenever. I mean, I literally used to watch a Freddy movie to go to bed to, as sick as that sounds for a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. I don't know, for as young as I was, I always knew it was a movie. Like I always knew it was pretend. So even though it's diving into these dark things, and it sounds almost like child abuse, like, oh, you made your kid watch Nightmare on Elm Street 4 before he went to bed and then went to a Christian school. But that's just how my brain worked. It was like, this is awesome. But the movie that really, getting out of the slashers, the other horror film that has always been one of my absolute favorites, that really had almost as much of a big impact me on as Child's Play 3 is The Lost Boys. Absolutely love The Lost Boys. That vampires is probably right up there with slashers as far as my favorite horror genres, horror subgenres of all time. And just the style of that movie, the soundtrack, the blending of like genuinely creepy stuff with a lot of fun, and just the energy of that movie is just intoxicating for me. Where as a kid, I mean, it was just like a constant rewind and just watch it over and over and over again. And so, even though I've never wanted a mullet in my life, I always thought that like Kiefer Sutherland had the coolest version of a mullet if there ever was one.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
It's so much about that movie I've always loved. So that's another big one for me.
Well, when you mention The Lost Boys around me, that movie along with Jaws are the 2 movies I've seen the most in my life, the most times in my life.
It's probably up there for me too.
I rented that movie there was a little like convenience store right across the street from my house that rented movies. I would rent that from them all the time. I remember one time I was home from school sick, and my grandmother rented it for me. Like, get better. This will help you get better. So yeah, the Lost Boys was a huge, and that was kind of a safe movie. That was one that my mother would allow me to rent or to watch.
Yeah,
because it's vampires, and like you said, it's scary, but it's also kind of it's cool, it's hip, it's what I mean. So that one was okay. Jaws was okay. The original Halloween was okay, because I always say that like Halloween for my mother's generation was like Scream kind of for my generation. That was the horror movie that everybody knew, everybody watched, everybody liked. It was like, that was the crossover kind of horror movie. But yeah, you mentioned The Lost Boys, and it's like, oh God, I love that movie so much.
I do too. I had the pleasure of being able to finally meet Kiefer Sutherland and Jason Patrick earlier this year at Mad Monster and got a picture with both of them. So, and then I had to go back and go to their table and get them to sign something. So that was a bucket list item for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I met them a few years ago. I met Corey Feldman. I would have loved to have met Corey Haim. But those are the three that I've met that have signed my poster. So, but yeah, that movie means a lot to me.
Yeah, same.
Big time. What about you, Rambo? Was there a particular horror movie that really kicked open the door to the genre for you?
I'm trying to think, because the ones that keep popping up, they're not really horror. They're like Aliens, Predator. They're more like action sci-fi. So if I think of a horror one, I was going to think of this for later, but one of them I would say was definitely this film here, The Blob.
Oh, The Blob
remake.
Yeah.
I think because as a kid, never heard of the original. I did eventually see it. Wasn't for me, but just the way that remake is, where it's kind of still not talked about as much, because The Thing is fantastic and that gets its appraisal, richly deserved. The Fly is talked about, but people kind of sleep on The Blob. When you watch it, it just does so many things right with the characters of Kevin Dillon and Shawnee Smith, the smarter than you think script, where you think one guy's going to be the lead, but he's not. And you did do a little flip on that. The fantastic makeup effects and just like the fact that I'm watching it and I'm a kid, and then I see this one kid get killed. I'm like, oh, that's not usually what's supposed to happen. It just gets pulled in the water. It comes out. He's melted out. I'm like, shit. I didn't see as a kid, but
that's pretty horrific, though. That's pretty like I can vividly remember the first time I saw RoboCop 2, and I was not prepared. Like when they execute Alex at the beginning. Oh my God, that freaked that was too graphic. That was too real. That just shook me.
Definitely. And just with the rest of the film, just it's the fake slasher film within the slasher film. Was it the Garden Tool Massacre, which is pretty clever, that the kids are watching in the movie theater. And likable characters, Shawnee Smith with the machine gun. Come on, did you do better than that? I mean, wow, this has like the whole package of horror and intensity and action and everything combined. That was just such a crowd pleaser. I'm like, oh yeah, horror films like this, these are what I'm really into. Such exhilarating pieces of entertainment that watching films like this wanted me to watch more. And General, I saw in the chat, Elm Street 4 was another example. Just Freddy Krueger was a big. I didn't see Jason and Michael Myers too much later. Freddy was what I saw as a kid.
Same.
Especially the first 4 movies. And the fourth one was always my favorite because Alice, Lisa Wilcox, was me. I was introvert. I would space out. I would imagine stuff. And so I saw a lot of myself in her. So when she's down in front of the mirror, you got the guitar crashing, I've lived vicariously through her, and it's like, oh, I could break out of my shell just like she can. And trust me, as when I was in school, I was a much different person. I kept to myself. I was very quiet. People were like, you got cursed. We don't get him cursed so he could get him in trouble. Like, that's what the other kids were doing. I was just like, oh, whatever. Just I don't want to waste my time in detention. I want to go home and watch more movies. I don't waste my time here. But I was able to break myself out of that shell because of stuff like that. Because I'm like, it's a movie. It's escapism. But if someone like her can do it, then I can do it as well. So, but yeah, the Nightmare on Elm Street films, the first 4, just the creativity, the imagination, and Robert Englund's performance really opened up of what you can do. The sky pretty much is the limit for especially those films in that era of 80s, 90s.
Yeah. I do want to mention really quickly, though. First off, thanks to Bobby and the Goosebumps crew for the super chats. All the super chats I'll get to toward the end of the night, but thank you too so far. For me, it was Friday the 13th, Part 7. I had mentioned that. Well, that was the one that kicked open the door to everything. Before then, I mean, I was very limited to what I could watch. If I wanted to rent something from the video store, I'd have to take the box to my mother. She'd have to peruse it, the front and the back. And if it looked too ghastly, she'd be like, no. So I knew I had a certain criteria of movie that I could rent. And all the big slasher series, Friday the 13th, Nightmare, all those, aside from Halloween, again, because Halloween was okay. So I'd seen Halloween, and I'd recorded it off television on a number of different VHS tapes, and I'd watch it all the time. I loved it. But it was shortly after we'd gotten our very first VCR. My stepdad came home with Friday the 13th, Part 7 on VHS. And my mother kind of mildly complained, no, he can't watch that. And my stepdad goes, it's just a movie. Let the kid watch the movie. And she was like, she kind of reluctantly acquiesced, and I watched it. And I wish I had a video of me watching that video, because I'm sure there was just a grin on my face the entire time. But that was the movie. The floodgates were open at that point. There were no restrictions except for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She was like, I'm not going to let you rent a movie about people getting cut up with a chainsaw. That's not even really the movie, So yeah, from there, I mean, the restraints were off and everything was open at that point. I know I've asked you guys to pick out some movies that had a big impact on your lives, the movies that made you love movies. But Cody, I wanted to get into to something with you. You mentioned you went to a Christian school. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming your family had to be fairly religious.
They weren't. That's the weird thing.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Again, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it, but there was a lot of strangeness about my childhood and things that happened. But yeah, my grandma was, to an extent. Maybe that's one of the reasons. I think it was more so the fact that it was a private school, and one of the more prestigious schools just happened to be a Christian school as well. But yeah, no, they weren't.
But was there like were horror movies something that was like a cafeteria lunchroom kind of conversation? Were a lot of the kids there into horror, or
no? And I think that's one of the reasons why I was drawn so much to horror my entire life, and then kind of coming full circle, what eventually, like, kind of the epiphany when I started YouTube and decided what I wanted to do with my YouTube channel was nobody talked about it. I remember I think the first time I ever heard anybody that was in my class talk about a horror film was after Bride of Chucky came out. And one of my friends just randomly blurted out, like, I can't wait to see Bride of Chucky. And it was like, you know about those? So, it was the craziest thing. And so, no, all my life, it's been, some variation of that, where either people didn't say it, like they were like me and were told not to say it in school and they listened, or, as I grew up, most of the conversations I had was surrounding like how terrible horror was. And it was just like, okay, well, they're not my people. No reason to talk about child's play with them.
Did you talk? I mean, did like your classmates know that like you liked horror? Did they shun you, or?
No, I mean, as a kid, especially when I was at this private school, I just never, I never really talked about it. So it was just one of those things where I felt like I would get in trouble, and because they were super strict on certain things. I mean, I remember one time I got in a ton of trouble because I walked outside. Like we were just told to walk outside. I think I was in first grade, so 7 years old, and they had like this big festival going outside. So they opened the door and I see it and I went, oh my God. And because I said, oh my God, they were, ah! And so I was pretty much, I would speak when spoken to for the little bit that I was, even as a young kid. As I got a little bit older, I think I probably brought it up a little bit, but horror just never really seemed to be the genre that anybody really wanted to talk about. It was always action, or, as I started to get into my more teenage years, comic book films, because then we had Blade and X-Men and Spider-Man kind of kicking things off. And, it was always the big blockbuster stuff, like Matrix Resurrection's coming out, or no, Matrix Reloaded's coming out. Have you seen it? It was always those movies. So horror, I never really felt like I got to talk with anybody about it. And that was one of the things that when I started my channel, I made the mistake that everybody does. You try to do everything, try to emulate all the channels that you like, and you become a hodgepodge. And it wasn't really taken off. And then one day I was like, I don't know, like I want to review a franchise, and I haven't watched horror in a while. And so I did like a little video where I asked the few viewers I had at the time to vote, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, whatever. Nightmare on Elm Street won. And so I started to review those movies, and suddenly the views started to change a little bit and the engagement changed a little bit. And I was like excited to talk about the next one. And so it was like I finally kind of peered through the door and saw the horror community for the first time.
I definitely, I can completely, so like people knew I was the horror person, but I had nobody to really talk horror with because nobody else was really a horror person. So that's what eventually got me. That's how I eventually found my way to YouTube. So yeah, but we'll definitely
Similar
get
paths.
yeah. We'll definitely get deeper into YouTube here momentarily. But I'd asked you guys to pick out a few movies that really made you love movies. So Cody, do you have one you want to mention?
Yeah, so like I said, I was trying to approach this list a little differently, and even though this absolutely is one of my favorite movies of all time, it's one of the more impactful ones, and that's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the John Hughes film. And this is one that, like a lot of the others, my dad introduced me to. You could pretty much, most of my favorite movies of all time is going to start with that at some point. But what's so unique about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for me and my family and my movie fandom is like this is the one movie I can think of that like brings my family together. We all have our favorites that we share, but it's to the point where every single Thanksgiving, this is on at my house, this is on at my dad's house, if we're not together. And almost every year, if we're not together, at some point we call each other or we text each other like a picture of, hey, watching Planes, Trains, and my kids have started to pick it up where if a certain point in the day comes and I haven't put it on yet, they put it on like, what's going on? This is missing. And they just put it on. And so I'm pretty sure that as I get older and they move out of the house, it's going to carry on that way where Thanksgiving's going to come. And if they're not home with me, they're going to text me, hey, I'm watching Planes, Trains. And so it's one of those movies that really kind of captures for me like how some films and our love for films can like really bring us together and make us feel connected when we're not even with each other. And it's one of the only films that really gives me that feeling. And it's one of the few things that I really enjoy about what I do and being able to kind of connect with people through our love for certain movies. So, I mean, of course, I could get into the thousands of reasons why it's just an amazing movie, even without all of that. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time. And it's absolutely timeless, but that's really what makes it mean so much to me.
Yeah.
And man, anytime I watch that film, it makes me miss John Candy even more.
Oh yeah. Did you see that clip that they had not too long ago? I think Steve Martin was doing a like a documentary.
The book, his script.
Yep.
He's like tearing up because there was a speech he had, but it got cut.
Yeah,
man.
Candy was a big part of my childhood. I remember telling my mom one time that I wanted to grow up and be like John Candy because I was a husky kid, and I thought I was funny, and I liked attention. So, I used to, but Uncle Buck was one I constantly watched. I also loved who's Harry Crumb, which is one like I never hear anybody talk about. You know what I mean? But yeah, Planes, Trains, right up there as well. Yeah, I mean, Candy, what would the 80s have been like without John Candy in it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Planes, Trains, Uncle Buck, and The Great Outdoors were three of my most rewatched comedies of all time. And, John Candy, Chris Farley, a lot of these guys that died. I mean, Robin Williams probably being the biggest one because he was around and so impactful for me that, they're so funny and they're so comforting, and yet they're so like a melancholy sad at the same time when you watch them, because it's like you miss them even though you didn't know them. They were just such an impactful piece of you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I was talking about Robin Williams on a stream the other night, and it's like I think somebody mentioned like it's been I forget how many years since he's passed away, and it's like, damn it, it still doesn't even feel like he's gone, you know. And you think about all the great performances he did, and just what a firecracker he was when he was on talk shows, and like, but underneath it all, he was just he was what they say about the clown, crying on the inside, so.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Matt, what's one of your picks?
Well, I got a few here, but since Cody mentioned I love Summer Rental. I love the bit where the guy's in his bed is like, "Are you watching the Smurfs? You see the episode with Papa Smurf beat the hell of a guy with a red hat? You see that episode?" But I brought this up because this is my personal favorite comedy. It's the film I watch anytime, can never get tired of it. And it's going to be like the weirdest choice because people are like, really? But it always hit me at the right spot. And that is The Golden Child.
Yeah.
Because
I always feel like a weirdo for saying that's my favorite Eddie Murphy film.
Really?
Yeah, because nobody ever talks about it.
Yeah, because anytime I watch that film, what he says, I could see myself, if I was as quick as him, saying the same things. Like, it's such the pinnacle ordinary man in an extraordinary situation. And every step of the way, it's like he approaches these weird situations. They get weirder and weirder, but the way he reacts is so natural. From take this big breath, tit tats as you want, please. Or when the Victor One steals his money and he's on the boat, but there's no paddle, there's no motor. It's like with $100 could got a boat with a motor. Show up a paddle. Yeah, I don't paddle. Go paddle his ass when I find him. Go paddle your ass when you find you. You hear me? Don't roll your ass till it bleeds. I
want the knife.
Please. My sweet brother Numpsy, I just see you're busy right now. Come back another time. And the one always gets me is at the end when the kid is so calm. It's like, did someone slip you a Valium?
But it's one of those movies that I quote all the time, like especially if I'm around my dad, because he's one of the only people that would even know what the hell I'm talking about. But they all screw up and be like, "I'm sorry, Numpsy."
But yeah, it's one of those films that's not looked at as fondly. I know Eddie Murphy for some reason hates it. Don't understand it, but whatever. But yeah, it's one of those films that does have some good imagination. I know it came out the same year as Big Trouble in Little China. Big Trouble, of course, has more of the adventure, action, spectacle. Great movie. Like I said, this one, like, because of his character and that while Eddie Murphy works well R-rated, he could still work PG-13, which this was. And that even though it's a fantasy and it's a bit of a maybe more toned down compared to Beverly Hills Cop of 48 Hours, he could still work. And I think Roger Ebert said it best, like, it rests on his shoulders. This shows, because 40 Hours is great, but at least he had Nick Nolte. Beverly Hills Cop is great, but at least he had John Ashton and Judge Reinhold. This really cemented that he could carry a movie on his own. And while there's great supporting cast with James Hahn and Victor Wan and I always forget his name, Charles Dance from Last Action Hero and others, he really carries it at just his quick wit, at just what he's able to come up with at the top of his head. It just always, I could always laugh every time I watch it because it's so relatable with the way his character just approaches each situation.
I think the fact that he's a savior of children and, he's going through like literally hell and back to try to save someone, I think it brings an element to him that's kind of not really been there before in movies like Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours, where he's just kind of the wisecracking guy that's, still like a good on the side of good, but this one there's like that little dramatic edge that you don't really have in the other two that I think balances it out a bit and makes even though it's PG-13, it makes the humor hit a little harder than it normally would.
Yeah, definitely. Even the opening where it's funny, but he's on camera because he's looking for a kid, and yeah, he's doing it with wit, but he's getting mad that the person wants to talk about a turtle
Mm-hmm.
than this person, this kid that he's found. So, absolutely get what you mean.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Great movie. I need to revisit that one. It's been a long time. Cody, you got another one on your list you want to share?
Yeah. So another one that I came across maybe 2-3 years before I started my YouTube channel. And this is one, one of the things that I love the most about my channel and being able to reach people and talk movies is I love being able to turn people onto movies that they otherwise would have never experienced. Like we all love the blockbusters, we all love the big franchises and stuff as much as anybody else, and the classics that everybody talks about. But the most rewarding thing for me is when somebody comments and says, "I would have never heard of this," or "I have never heard of this. I watched it on your recommendation. It's one of my favorites now." Like that's just something that I adore. And a movie that really made me want to do that is a movie called Rudderless, which I'm sure neither of you probably have even heard of. And so this is a film that came out like, actually, let me look up the year while I'm talking about it. So it's actually directed by William H. Macy, which is one of the few films that he directed. It came out in 2014. So this is a movie that I just happened to come across a YouTube ad. I was watching a video in my single bedroom apartment, and this ad just kind of came across, and I was like, that actually looks kind of interesting, and I'm bored. So let me watch that. And what the movie's about is it stars Billy Crudup, and he is somebody who his son dies in a school shooting at the very beginning of the film. And fast forward a few years, and he's downward spiraled, lost his career, everything. His son's death just destroyed him. And he comes across he gets a hold of these CDs and notebooks that his son was actually writing music that he never knew about. And so he starts to listen to the music and learns the songs and goes to this little local bar that's owned and operated by William H. Macy's character and starts playing it. And it really starts to catch on. And you get Anton Yelchin in one of his final roles, who gets kind of really motivated by the music. And they make a little band and become this local this local commodity where everybody like loves their music, and he's playing his son's music the entire time. And so it becomes a movie about like connecting with lost loved ones, and also you get the complication in there of like getting all of the acclaim for something that you didn't personally create, but you're somebody that's brought it to everybody. Like it's just a very layered movie that's funny. The music's amazing, but also it has multiple gut punches in store for you. And if there's any movie on like my top 100 films of all time that most people have never heard of, that's the one. And so going back to your question earlier about movies that just kind of hit you on a different level, and you're searching for something deeper, that's one that best represents that for me. But also it's just a movie that I saw where I continuously love introducing people to it, and 9 times out of 10 when I mention it, they've never heard of it, and again 9 times out of 10 they come back and tell me how much they love it. Like I can't show it now, but I have a whole wooden art piece that a friend of mine who's a big artist, does a lot of my graphic design, that he made just because he loved the movie so much that I paid him for it, obviously, but he made it for me, and so it's been on my wall ever since. So that's a really big one for me.
I just jotted it down. I'm going to go seek it out after we finish up here. But I can absolutely attest. Yes, when you get that comment or that message from somebody saying like, "Oh, you turned me on to this movie or that movie, and now I love it. Thank you so much." But mine are never deep movies. Mine are like Pieces or Burial Ground or you know what I mean, the schlocky stuff. But hey, love is love. Love is love, right?
There you go.
But yeah, I do love that. Like I love to hear people say like, I would have never checked out this bad old movie unless you talked about it, and now I love it.
Yeah, it's something that I've over the last year, I'm actually like a month behind now that I say that I need to get back into gear, but for like over a year now, I've made a point where once a month I dedicate one video to just doing like a hidden gem review. I know it's never going to be a views behemoth. I know sometimes it might not even be worth the time I put into it, but the gratification that I get of even just the 5 or 6 comments of like, oh my God, I wrote this down, never heard of it before. Like that's why I'm here. That's what I love to do. So
Yeah.
I'll take the loss on it.
Yeah, I do. I don't want to dive in too much into being a YouTuber just yet, but when you mention like the comments or like the messages that you get, the really positive ones, you know, is there one specific like really good message that you've gotten from somebody that just kind of like every now and again, especially during the pandemic, like I did a lot of live streams during the pandemic, and people would say like, thank you so much for doing this. Like I'm trapped inside. I'm not doing well mentally. I'm
Mhm.
having bad thoughts, but like hanging out with you for just a few hours a night, that's that helps.
Mhm.
Or like, people have reached out and said like, you're like I don't know what about, me talking about bad movies, but like it helped get me through a hard time. Like, a loved one passed away, or there was a
Mhm.
breakup, or those kind of messages. Like it because I don't, and I don't know if it's the same with you guys, but like when I'm shooting a video, I don't think of like how far it could go, how many
Mhm.
people it could reach, or that it could have that kind of impact on somebody. So when you do get that feedback and it has had that kind of impact, it's like, wow,
Yeah, no,
that's
I've had a number of those that stick with me quite a bit, where very similar to what you're saying, even before the pandemic, but certainly during it, where some version of my video helped them not do something extremely bad. And you pretty much summed it up there. Like when I'm sitting in a room by myself, talking into a camera, pretending it's an audience, just talking about a movie. The fact that it could go that far always continuously blows me away. I've had people say that like, they went through cancer treatment and
Mhm.
my channel helped them through that time. I had somebody who I was reading I used to do a little podcast thing every once in a while where I would take questions like a Q&A, and I barely got through reading it, holding my composure. It was more or less somebody that said that their best friend was dying essentially, and they used to watch my channel together in their final months, weeks, whatever. And my channel motivated the surviving friend to go into film school.
Oh,
And so it was almost like a 1, 2, 3 punch where I was just like, ooh, like reading it, I was just like, it's
right,
just,
right, right.
you
Yeah.
don't, it's amazing. And, even just one of those, and then when you go to these cons and stuff and people walk up to you and say stuff like that, it's, sometimes it gets hard to ignore the bad comments because they're inevitable and sometimes they're pretty horrific. But
Hmm, hmm.
one of those is worth, enduring the hundreds, thousands of the other ones for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned running into people in public, and it always it's always kind of, it takes me aback a little bit when I do, but one of the best encounters, I was in a comic book store with Jeremy, and this guy came up to us with his son, and he was like, hey, my son and I, we love watching your guys' videos, and it's great to meet you guys, and he was like, and thank you for allowing me to be able to watch your videos with my son. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And the whole time, the little kid, I don't know how old he was, but he was just staring up at Jeremy with just awe. Like this
Mhm.
was somebody he'd seen on the internet. So he was just in awe. And of course, Jeremy's just kind of oblivious to all that. He's asking the dad about comic books and you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Stuff like that Jeremy's into. But the little kid was just staring up at Jeremy in awe the whole time. Thought
Mhm.
that was really cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Matt, do you have any messages that really meant a lot to you, or comments that have meant a lot to you over the years?
Nah, I just get called an asshole. No, there's been a few. There's been a few, and any little bit is humbling, extremely humbling. So can't complain about that. Uh, I mean, I don't think anything like Cody has been through on that level, but occasionally you get a person saying, "Hey, I'm going through tough times, or I'm at work and things aren't going the best," and they just They love you hear me rant on whatever movie or whatever. A lot of people love to hear me rant because I go like Andrew Dice Clay, like over the top style. It just
same thing on my channel, which I'm very good at it. And sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's depressing, where it's just like, man, I wish the videos where I was talking positively got near as many as the views where I'm on the thumbnail doing this.
Yeah, hey, look. I mean, drama and rants. I mean, people love that stuff, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I yeah. So, but yeah, there's some positive ones out there for Rambo, I'm sure. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there was one in the chat just a little while ago. Somebody said that you turned them back on to watching action movies, you know? So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Let's do a couple of more movies that really had impacts on us and made us love movies. Then we'll talk YouTube stuff. Cody, do you have another one you want to throw out there?
Yeah, so another one for me, for a multitude of reasons. I didn't get into it very much, but my mom was never really around growing up. My dad pretty much raised me on his own. She popped in here and there. But one movie that one of the last times that I saw her, we went to go see together, and so it kind of sticks with me for a small reason because of that, but also for the subject of the movie is Jon Favreau's Chef. And I'm somebody that I've always loved cooking, was never really good at it as a young age or whatever, and I always kind of wanted to experiment more as I got a little bit older. And Chef was one of those movies that, for all the reasons that Jon Favreau made it kind of impacted me. He was the guy that did Iron Man and then tried to do Cowboys and Aliens, all these bigger movies, and then this movie was kind of him like soul searching, trying to go back to something simpler and find himself. And that's literally what the story of this character, Carl Casper, is, where he was this young chef that had a lot of good write-ups and was kind of like this force to be reckoned with in Miami, and then kind of falls into a rut and just basically starts making the stuff that the higher ups tell him to make, and has a little bit of a breakdown publicly, and then has to go off and find himself, and goes and makes a food truck, and goes back to basics and rediscovers his love for cooking and his mends his relationship with his son and all these other things. And so it's a movie that really resonates for me in a lot of different ways, but it's also the movie that I think really sparked me to give cooking like a genuine try. And because the food looks incredible in the movie, and it makes it look fun for all the hell that they had to go through and all the work and all the money that goes into it. But so I think that movie is the one that really made me start to dive back into it. And since then, what has it been, like 15 years plus since that movie came out? I'm at a point now where like cooking is almost as important to me as movies, and it's a big thing with my family, and it's my kids and my wife. I think that's why they keep me around. So there's a lot of things that this movie did to impact me, but it's just one very similar to Rudderless, where it's one of those smaller movies that's just a lot more meaningful, that I kind of hold a little closer to the chest.
Yeah, very cool. What about you, Matt?
I mean, it's nothing deep in terms of drama. It is a rip-off movie, but it's a childhood favorite. So I figure I'll just mention this one just because not many people would, but it's a personal favorite of mine. And I'm showing this is a gift someone sent me a while back, but that is Leviathan.
Leviathan, yeah.
The reason being is that it is a rip-off of The Thing and Alien, but just underwater. But ever since I was a kid, this always hit the right notes for me because of the cast. We have Peter Weller, Ernie Hudson, Daniel Stern, Amanda Page, Richard Crenna, and just all the way it was made, to Jerry Goldsmith's music, to the effects by Stan Winston, to the production design by Ron Cobb, who worked on my favorite film, Aliens, which, by the way, from what I understand, Cole, we both feel the same on Alien 3, because I hate that film to death.
Yeah, it's up there with Seed of Chucky and Freddy's Dead and a couple others.
You know what? I like Alien 3. I like Alien 3. I do. I like Alien 3. I'm sorry.
I wish I could. Every time I turn it on and try to give it a new, like some fresh eyes and try to like remove emotion from it, that opening 2 minutes, I'm like, nope.
Did you ever? Yeah. Did you ever try the assembly cut?
I did. I think it's one of those movies where I don't think either cut is really totally satisfying for me. But there's things about the assembly cut that I like. Is that the one where it comes out of a cow?
Yeah.
I remember that being a little weird.
Yeah,
But yeah, I've seen both of them.
That's all I'm saying. If you want this to be PG, I can't go to Alien 3 because
okay, all right.
Dice Clay is going to come out.
And look, I understand. I understand why people hate Alien 3. You open the movie up by killing off immediately two characters that you loved in the last film off screen.
And I'm supposed to care about a bunch of bald people that assault other people. And I'm supposed to care that an alien is killing one by one. I'm like, good. Thank you. Let me pay you. I'm going to pay the xenomorph more money. Kill more of these jamotes, please.
There's a very nihilistic dark side of me that feels like that was a really ballsy move on their part. And like, I love the dark nastiness that Alien 3 becomes. So
how do you feel about Resurrection?
I'm not a fan of Resurrection, though.
I'm weird because I hate 3, but I actually really enjoy Resurrection. For the most part. There's moments I can't defend, like the last 5 minutes, but
yeah. But Aliens, Matt, I mean, that's, I do know people who don't like Aliens, but there's very few and far between.
Who are these people? I want names.
But yeah, Aliens is, I mean, that's my favorite film ever. So maybe like films are similar to that I gravitate towards. So in a film like this, which has fish monsters and things of that weirdness, it's really like the cast and the humor, and like when Meg Foster says, "I know you've gone through hell," and Ernie Hudson's like, "Gone, bitch, we're still here." And very un-PC ending. You're not going to see many times where Peter Weller smacks a woman in the face and knocks her out in today's age.
No,
but she did deserve it. She let him die. Just saying. But yeah, it goes back to that growing up. How when you watch interviews with like John Carpenter and them, they always talk about the films they grew up with, like Thing from Another World or the films in the 50s, and they watched maybe in the theater or on home late night on TV. That's the way it was with me, where action monster movies, this is the type of stuff that piqued my imagination, but also because I actually liked the characters, it was able to carry me along without someone flashing every 5 minutes. And that's where, when I see a film nowadays, likable characters is very prevalent to me. And I know that sounds like an obvious thing, but that's not always what happens in a movie. So that stuff just really sticks with me. It may be a generic movie, but when it hits those enough of those right moments, it can carry me through to be such a satisfying viewing experience.
Yeah. All right, last round, and then we'll dive into some YouTube talk. Cody, give us a banger.
All right, well, we're pulling out the big guns literally with this one. So another movie like Child's Play 3 that I kind of feel like I've talked about ad nauseum, but I can't not talk about it on this subject is Terminator 2. So in the subject of camera and sequels there. So Terminator 2, I'm 90% sure was the first Arnie movie I ever saw. And all throughout my childhood, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the hero. Like, this guy, every time he had a new movie, that was the event of the year. It was him and Adam Sandler. The rest of the movies that come out doesn't matter. I'm just waiting for that one. So T2, I mean, I don't really need to get into all the reasons why it's amazing. It's one of the greatest movies ever, one of the greatest sequels ever. But it really just kind of made me a fanatic of action as well as sci-fi. This is a movie that has a little bit of everything. It has a touch of that horror vibe from the first one, though not nearly as prominent. You got obviously action is the big piece of this one. You still got the sci-fi and the time travel element, which I've always loved time travel movies ever since this, whether it's Back to the Future or Frequency or anything like that. But this is one where, this is one of those movies that is representative of the old school, like macho, quintessential 80s, 90s action films. But it's a lot smarter than a lot of those ended up being as they age. Like when I think of things like Commando, which was another big one for me. That's a movie that I feel like you kind of have to have some nostalgia to truly appreciate, where T2 is much more timeless. And it's got so much more going for it. And then you have things like Sarah Connor, who to this day is still like one of the, along with Ripley, what I think of when I think of like badass female characters, strong female characters. The whole theme of fatherhood that's in this one, where the T-800 is kind of like this surrogate stepfather to a certain degree. Anything with fatherhood, as I'm sure I probably made clear by now, is something that's very close to me because of my relationship with my dad. So this is one that, for as much as I'm known for horror, and as much as I genuinely love horror, the only genre that can compete for my love for horror is my love for action. And half of the week, when you ask me which one's my favorite, it's going to be action. And Terminator 2 is my, that along with Die Hard is my favorite 2 movies of all time, period.
I often say that T2 was the last true event movie, at least in my mind it was, because like when I was a kid and that movie was coming out, like everybody seemed there was such hype for that movie. It seemed like it was everywhere. It was constantly, trailers or commercials were all on TV, the cast were everywhere doing interviews, your billboards everywhere, Terminator on your French fry container. Everybody was talking about Terminator 2. Like even my mother, who hated Arnold Schwarzenegger, was talking about Terminator 2. I'm pretty sure Predator might have been my first Arnold movie, and I used to watch it all the time because that was action sci-fi. You got a monster there, he's picking people off like a slasher. It just had everything. I'd watch it all the time. My mother would just I hate him. But even she was talking about Terminator 2. So to me, like, there's not been a movie since that has had that level of hype. And there's been some pretty big movies since then. But to me, that's like the last real event movie. But yeah, I mean, T2 was, wow. That was just, that was a cultural phenomenon, really.
Still is in my heart. It still is. But I think it's also the movie, too, that really got me interested in director's cuts. Because I watched a certain version of that movie for most of my childhood, and then my dad had the Laserdisc with the director's cut on it that had all the extra T-1000 stuff and like the different third act where he starts to be like glitchy after the liquid nitrogen. And I remember that really kind of opened my mind too, like, oh, there's different versions of movies. Like filmmakers can go back and add things in, and this isn't the version that they made, and like started to get my wheels turning about how movies are made. As a kid, you just assume they turn the camera on, they shoot the first scene, shoot the second scene, and that's the movie. And so that was really what started to get me thinking about, like, wow, somebody actually has more stuff than we've ever been allowed to see. That's crazy. And sometimes we get the joy of being able to see some of it.
And you mentioned Sarah Connor, like seeing Linda Blair, seeing
very different movie,
very different movie. Yeah. But seeing, oh my gosh, what's the actress's
Linda
name?
Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton. I'm sorry. Yeah, I had a brain fart there. I'm thinking Savage Streets here with Linda Blair, but Linda Hamilton is Sarah Connor there. She's buff. She's badass. She's racking that shotgun with one arm. Like that had to be like the first time I saw like a woman on screen that was like, she's sexy, but like she could totally kick my ass. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, just something about her racking that shotgun with one arm. I was like, ooh, you know what I mean? Yeah, like, whew, goodness gracious. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Terminator, and it's such an ending to that film as well. They should have just stopped there. We didn't need any more Terminators after T2. Just stop there.
How do you feel about Dark Fate, by the way?
I wasn't a fan.
Okay.
I've not really liked it. And I've not even seen T3. I've completely avoided T3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did kind of like the one with Christian Bale. I did kind of like that one.
Salvation,
yeah. I did like that one. And Genesis is
it happened.
Genesis happened. Yeah. It's out there. It happened. Yeah, it happened. But yeah, they should have just after T2, just stop. You've reached the mountaintop. It's all going to be downhill from there. Some people say, T1 was the mountaintop. You didn't need to follow up T1. T1's a pretty crazy. I think T1's a pretty perfect action sci-fi movie too.
Oh, I agree.
they totally upped the ante exponentially with T2.
Mm-hmm.
No question about it. Give us a banger here, Matt, to close out this segment.
Well, I trying to think what to pick, but I figure since we had one sequel, I'm gonna go with my pick for the most underrated sequel. It's always a personal favorite of mine. It's a film I always champion. And while I love the first one to death, this one has become my favorite of the franchise, and that is Predator 2.
Oh yeah.
Now, I love the first Predator. I saw that so many times VHS tape. Literally, the cover was more white than anything. Yeah, about how great what it was. I even remember the trailers. It was the pickup artist, Robert Downey Jr., and it was a teaser for Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise. That's how much I watch Predator. So I love to death. But Predator 2, I like how, like a sequel should, it kept similar things, but it was also very much its own movie. Where the first one did a wonderful job and a slow build up, and where the mystery of what the Predator is. Well, now we know what the Predator is. Now we just have the full on roller coaster ride. We have in the city, it's still a jungle, but it's an urban jungle. And just Danny Glover, I love that they didn't try to do an Arnold 2.0. They tried to go a very different route. And Danny Glover is a great actor. I think he handled himself very well. And just how relentlessly paced that film is. And you got Bill Paxton, you got Maria Conchita Alonso, you have some memorable lines, which is very on PC today.
Mm-hmm.
And also like what they added to the lore of the Predator with not just the different weapons, but the finale with all the other Predators around it, introducing the Predator ship. And one of the things that many people talk about, but I love how it's like something not subliminal, but how personal the Predator was against Danny Glover.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch it so many times, I see it where like he's staring down at him. He killed his buddy just to take his necklace and put in the cemetery to just mess with him. I'm like, okay, that's actually a different, nice little addition that they really haven't done since, from what I remember of the Predator, which is not much of the Predator and Predators and Predatees and Predators and whatever the hell it's called now. But to me, that's a sequel where I never really understood the complaints. Okay, Arnold's not back, I get, but he did Total Recall and Terminator 2. It's kind of hard to fault him not doing those films instead. Yeah. I know Arnold didn't like the city. I like the city because it was a carbon copy of the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't think it needed a slow build again. I think that's one of the mistakes for me that Predators did, is it just felt like I was seeing the same movie, but not the same, but similar. Why I could just watch the first one again. Here, it felt like still a different movie and a different. The little detail where they say it's the hottest summer, so everyone has little sweat stains, and the idea just how relentlessly Gary Busey's insane in that movie. He's insane in real life, but he's insane in that movie too. I love that.
You mentioned, I mean, the cast in Predator 2 is pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah,
that's a stacked cast, you know.
I love how Bill Paxton's the only guy to get killed by all of the like Terminator and Alien and Predator.
What a career that guy had. My goodness, what a resume.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
Jeez.
Rest in peace to him.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, I love Predator 2 too, and I love it just as much as the first movie. Honestly, the first movie I think's technically a better movie, but Predator 2 is just so much fun. Like that shootout at the beginning with you know the guy's been hit. He's got like a bullet. He just takes a handful of coke and just puts it right in the wound, you know.
Yo, Scorpio is ready.
Yeah. Scorpio, yeah, and King Willie in the alley. There's just so much great stuff in that movie. I love it. And I've always been a fan of Stephen Norrington. I've always been a fan. Stephen not Steve Norrington.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Anyway. I've always liked his stuff, even like Nightmare on Elm Street 5. I love the way that movie looks.
Stephen Hopkins.
Stephen Hopkins. Thank you. Yes. I've always liked his stuff. I like Blown Away. I don't know. I like pretty much all his stuff. So
Judgment Night.
Judgment Night.
Love Judgment Night.
Yeah,
Love
he doesn't get enough he doesn't get enough praise, I think. But
Well, he did lost his space. I kind of hurt him a bit.
yeah, that'll hurt you.
Yeah.
That'll knock you down a peg or two. That's
Matt
for
LeBlanc joint.
Remember that was
Yeah.
one of the first DVDs that my dad bought. It was that, and like I
Really?
think The Matrix were some of the first big like new releases when DVD was a thing.
Yeah.
So did you watch it back to back? Like, I wonder which one's better, The Matrix or Lost in Space?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I remember. I mean,
that
of
was a
course,
tough
we
one.
knew The Matrix was better, but I remember I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I remember as a kid that we liked it.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the general consensus is it's terrible. So I'm sure if I ever revisited it, and the fact that I remember nothing about the film should say enough. But I think it was just the technology at the time. It was like, well,
Yeah.
special features. What is this?
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's and I mentioned it briefly, and Cody and I are both wearing Jaws shirts, but Jaws was an enormous film on me growing up. It had an enormous impact on my life. It's the movie, like I said, right up there with The Lost Boys. I've seen it countless times. I know it by heart. A great movie. So yeah, I'll just throw that one out there for my little pick.
There you go.
So let's segue into talking about some YouTube stuff. And Matt, I want to start with you. Your channel goes all the way back to 2010.
Oh,
yeah. Was there a particular creator at the time that encouraged you or inspired you to get into YouTube? How did you find your way onto the platform?
I want to say around 2006, 2007. Believe it or not, I found YouTube because of, I want to say it was the Angry Nintendo Nerd at the time, Angry Video Game Nerd.
Yeah.
I was on Google searching because I love these guys. I grew up with the Ninja Turtles.
The Ninja Turtles, yeah.
And so the 2003 cartoon, which I love, was on. So I was always looking up for information on them and what's coming out, when the DVDs, because they were releasing like 2 episodes, 3 episodes per DVD, which was a ripoff. I still bought every copy, so they got my money. But then I saw, someone did a review of the video game. And I remember playing this video game as a kid. And then I'm like, it's this guy named Angry Nintendo Nerd. And so then I'm like, what's this thing called YouTube? And then that's when I started look around and see what was up. And when I started my channel, the first one, embarrassing enough, was me trying to do movie tributes, which was the worst tributes ever. It was like a still picture that did move, but I'm just going to put a song under and just put a bunch of still pictures that will be somehow exciting for someone, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It was just literally teaching myself how to edit, where it's from still pictures to moving pictures. I'm like, you know what? Let me try to edit with the song, like teaching myself editing using equipment. But that's good. I mean, it's good to just get in there and make mistakes and learn on the fly. Because the more you do it, it's like you like it, you start to enjoy it, and then you start maybe to get a little bit better inch by inch, mile by mile. And then for videos, I was listening to a Dead Pit Horror radio show where they had their YouTube channel. They were talking about movies. And I'm like, you know what? I could talk about movies. So I think one of the first videos I talked about was how much I hated Jaws 4. And so I was like, wow, why is the shark roaring like a lion? And, how come she hit the shark, but it exploded? Did it swallow dynamite? Like, I don't know. It had a gas reflex or something. I don't know. But it just, none of it made sense. And Marv Van Peebles, is he Jamaican? Is he not Jamaican? He's neither, but he's both. Like, his accent disappears and appears. And then I kept going, and that's when you start to notice a bit of YouTube, the copyright system. And because of those tributes at music, that channel was gone. So then I started a new one in 2010 and really just said, you know what? I'm working. I was working at a video store at the time called Mr. Movies. Funny enough, with the Jaws connection, that's the way I always put on, because they said it has to be a PG movie. And I'm like, well, it's PG technically, so I would always put that one on.
Loophole.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get mad at me. It's PG. I'll just fast forward like the first, 5 minutes with the, tatas. But after that, it's like, hey, it's PG. You can't get mad at me. And it's a great movie that you can rewatch all the time. So, and people seem to like it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say you mentioned Dead Pits, and I've often mentioned that they were my intro to YouTube too. So, and discovering sort of their community is what encouraged me to start doing my thing. So,
yeah, and they're very supportive. They mentioned me on one of their horror talk radio shows, and I'm like, why they mention me? I'm just making stupid videos. So I just kept going, and for some reason, some people liked them. The quality hasn't changed. I think it was a positive comment, but they said your videos look like they're from 2009, and I take that as a compliment. They're right, but they're true. But at the same time, I liked it that way. So,
well, you know what I respect about your channel, Matt, and it was something that I've always respected about your channel, and I think it may be it's akin to somebody saying your videos look like they're from 2009, but like you, but you're not putting on airs, you're not playing a character, you're not trying to hide something. You know what I mean? You're unapologetically you. And so the people who follow you because of that, they're your ride or dies, man. They're with you forever. So if they're attracted to who you really are, you know what I mean, which is what you're putting out there, then I mean they're going to stick with you forever. So that's something I've always admired about you.
Yeah, that's been the nice thing about it. So I can't complain about it. I'm very blunt, which gets me in trouble a lot, but at the same time, I remember he said he was the writer of the Thing prequel, but he's like, oh, this movie sucks, or it looks like it's crap. As the guy who said he was the writer for the Thing prequel was like, you can't. He was just getting mad at me. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I thought it looked like crap, and then I saw the movie and I thought it was crap. So just being honest about it. I'm not trying to mess up your day. I'm just being. I think that's the thing, is that I'm very blunt. I'm just gonna be honest, and sometimes it's like people get mad, but well, life goes on.
Yeah.
I didn't like was it Prometheus when it came out, and it's like you got like a bunch of death threats. I'm like, well, I'm still here. I'm still breathing.
So, I've gotten death threats too. We'll get into that area of YouTube soon. But Cody, and not to say, Cody, that you've not been around for a while too, because you certainly have. Was there a certain creator, or was there a certain creator that kind of influenced you or inspired you to start your own channel?
Yeah, I had kind of a false start in 2009. So if I had stuck with it, I would have probably been one of the super old dogs. But I remember it was right around the time I did a year of college, did not work out, dropped out, moved back home, and suddenly I'm in this spot where I'm like, I've been led to believe that as long as I study, I do good in school, everything's going to fall into place. And now that has just been blown up, and now I have no idea what I'm going to do. Where am I going to go? What's the plan? And I remember one thing that kind of gave me comfort in that year or so there, where I was kind of lost, is that's when like movie YouTube started to kind of happen. And I found like Jeremy Johns and Chris Stuckman and channels like that. And I was like, people talk about movies on this thing? That's cool. I thought this was for like cat videos. And so I started to really get into that. And so right around 2009, 2010, I had like a false start where I just had this, generic, cheap little HP laptop with a built-in webcam that was garbage. And so I started to do my own little videos, and they were terrible. I mean, you ever like open up your phone and it's the camera app and it's in selfie mode, and you get like that horrid like double chin angle, and you're like, oh, is that what I look like? That's kind of the cinematography of my early YouTube channel. And so it was just me on the couch with my laptop kind of like catty cornered, and I'm talking about like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and a couple of the newer movies that came out then, and didn't stick with it. Then you fast forward to 2015 or so, whenever I was finally dug myself out of my rut, saved enough money, moved out of my parents' house again, and got my own apartment. And I started to do acoustic covers and things like that. And then 2016 comes along, and or no, excuse me, that was 2013. 2016 comes along, and I had met my wife. We had moved in with each other, and my daughter was on the way, my youngest. And I remember I was doing basically construction testing, where I would go out to job sites before they built anything, and I was just driving hours and hours and hours a day. And I kept finding myself wanting to, like, I would listen to podcasts, and so things like AMC Movie Talk and Double Toasted, channels like that, I started to like wanted to like join in on the conversation a lot. And so I just started doing a little podcast for like 2 months, and then immediately grew out of that and wanted to do YouTube. And so I just one day randomly went and saw Sausage Party, of all movies, and said, "This is the one. People need to hear my thoughts on this one." So
I went back on your channel, and I was like, what was his first video? Let me see. What, the Sausage Party review?
I know.
Okay,
I know,
all right.
I know.
Not
yeah.
a bad intro. Not a bad intro.
So yeah, I was just started, which is something I always tell people, like, when you want to do YouTube, just start. Don't wait for the perfect moment or whatever. So that's literally what I did. Watched a movie, just started. Taught myself how to edit that weekend. Just locked myself in my bedroom with Adobe Premiere and trial and error for like 8 hours to get that little 4-minute video done. And like I said earlier, I kind of made the mistake of trying to emulate everybody. So I was like, okay, I want to do movie reviews like Stuckman and John's, and kind of go for both of those styles, be the relatable kind of funny guy, but also try to be a little introspective. But I also love AMC Movie Talk, and so I want to do like movie news shows. And then I love video games, so I want to do a video game news show. And so my channel was just kind of a little of everything, which is another thing that is I usually tell people with an asterisk, like when you start YouTube, it's good to kind of be a cover band for a while, at least until you figure things out. But eventually you have to stop. So I remember one day it took one comment where somebody commented, "This guy's a Jeremy Johns ripoff," and I changed everything about my channel. I changed my thumbnail style, I changed my background, I changed the style of how I did everything, my editing. And yeah, kind of the rest is history. But then that bit where I started to kind of dive into horror, and then my channel really started to kind of take shape after that.
Well, we mentioned, we mentioned getting good comments. Let's talk about getting some more interesting comments. We mentioned the death threats, which Cody, I don't know if you've had any, but Matt has, and I have. But let's talk about, like, how do you deal with, we criticize things, right? We're critics. How do we deal with criticism? How do we deal with, with trolls, or somebody saying like, "Oh, you're just a ripoff of Jeremy Johns"? Because I mean, sometimes criticism is good. Sometimes constructive criticism is like, okay, maybe I do need to up my, the audio's not that great, or whatnot. Constructive criticism is great, but then it's like, you suck, you're stupid, you're ugly. You know what I mean? How do you, Matt, you've been around for a while. How do you deal with those sorts of comments and those sorts of criticism, that kind of criticism?
Poorly. It just, honestly, it just depends on my mood. Sometimes I might ignore it, just whatever. It doesn't affect my day. That's the thing with anyone out there on the internet. Is a very big tool, of course. But if ever it gets to you, just shut it off, and you have your whole life in front of you. Just don't live by the word of the internet. Otherwise, they'll make you crazy, whether it be Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. I think a lot of people sadly take too much out of that, where they think that's their whole well-being. There's a lot more to life than that. It's still just a tool that you just shut off your computer, your phone, and just don't take it to heart. There's always going to be people who get mad at you. It's like, well, the world's still spinning. I'm still breathing. I'm still drinking my Mellow Yellow. I'm still sitting in this chair from 1975. I still got the Ninja Turtle poster right there. So guess what? I'm still here. It's all right. It's not the end of the world. And sometimes you just got to think, like, you know what? It's cool. It's fine. And then sometimes, like, fuck you. And then I block them or something. So sometimes it just depends. So, at this time, I don't really care. I've been on for so long. I've heard it all, from someone saying, "I'm going to do something to your mom," or someone saying, everything, anything, up, down, and center. I've been called everything. I've had people pretend to be me. I've had everything. I just don't care anymore. I'm just here. I'm still growing. I'm talking with two good people. I'm talking with someone who's a family golden child, which made my day. Which is a rare
Mine as
feat.
well.
So it's all good. I mean, that's the thing, folks. When you look at the real world, like on a tangent, was it a few weeks ago? I'm in Texas now. We had this hurricane come in.
Mm.
There's a lot more serious things than YouTube. So you get a bad word.
Oh, yeah.
I know there are people that sadly they do succumb to it. It's hard for you to put into words what they could do about that, but just know that there's always something. Your world is not the internet.
Yeah.
It's really not. And keep that in mind.
You know, I always say this of people who, you know, we point a camera at our faces and we give our opinion on something and then we post that on the internet. That's dangerous. And so my hat is off to everyone out there who does that, because it takes balls. There's a lot of people who would like to do what we do, but they're afraid of the criticism. They're afraid of, you know, they're afraid of getting that kind of feedback. And there's a lot of channels where it's just sort of a faceless, you know, faceless channels. You just hear people's voices. And part of me is kind of like, you know, like, what, I don't know. What are you hiding? But so when people put a camera in front of their face, they give their opinion and they post it on the internet. I just have so much respect for people like that. Because, you know, good things are going to come of it and bad things are going to come of it too, unfortunately. And Matt has very thick skin. Not a lot of people have that kind of thick skin. Cody, how do you deal with criticism and trolls and that sort of thing?
Well, criticism I deal with just fine. Very rarely does it come. It's usually just the troll comments. I mean, there's a big difference between, as you said earlier, like one that I got not too long ago when Maxine came out that I really appreciated was somebody saying like, hey, I think this is your time to actually get motivated to start diving into Italian horror a little bit more. Like, you're a guy that has this career as this horror YouTube guy and you've got this big blank spot in your horror knowledge. And I'm like, 100% valid, and you're right, and I should. And I love hearing stuff like that, because sometimes, especially when you're grinding as much as I am, sometimes you kind of lose sight of your blind spots. You know, you just kind of get into a rut, or you kind of know what you know and you stick to it. And having somebody that likes your channel or appreciates what you do, that gives you constructive criticism, it's very valuable. So when it comes in that form, I appreciate it greatly. But most of the time it's not that. It's what you said. It's like, you suck. Your face is weird. Your beard's ugly, or you know, whatever they could say. And so those ones, you know, they come in waves. You know, there's times where it feels like you'll have a weekend where it's just like, where did all the crazies come from? Like, the crazies just came out this weekend, and then you'll go weeks without getting a single one of them. So it comes in waves, and you know, much like Rambo said, it depends on my mood. You know, I'm somebody that I have very thick skin as well. I've had horrid things said. I've, you know, had death threats. I've been told to, you know, go delete myself. I don't know what's allowed on the YouTube platform to say. And then I've had things like that said about my youngest daughter when she was an infant. That still sticks with me. That's probably the worst one I've ever had.
Wow.
Because I gave Halloween 2018 a 3.5, and that wasn't good enough.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I've had every single thing said to me, about me. You know, at some point you kind of get numb to it, but you know, I have my cracks every once in a while. Sometimes I choose violence. You know, it just happens. You know, I tell people when they see me react to one, they're like, hey man, just don't feed the trolls. And I'm like, well, for every one you see me react to, I have ignored, blocked, or muted like 3 dozen. So this is the one where I've hit my little boiling point, and now I got to get some punches out, and I feel better. And
well, and as somebody with as sizable a platform as you, I mean, certainly you deal with it twice or more as often as Rambo and I.
Yeah, I mean, it comes out of nowhere. Sometimes I know it's coming. If a movie comes out and I'm just like, oh, I walk out of it like, here it comes. I know. And that's where it really gets tough, to what you were saying, where it takes balls, because we all know what we're supposed to say, but sometimes that's not your honest opinion. And are you going to stick to your honest opinion, or are you going to tell everybody what they want to hear? And And so there's times like that where, yeah, I kind of see it coming. Other times it comes out of nowhere. Like I had a woman today on and yesterday on Twitter, like losing her mind about me.
I saw that
because I filmed a little video in my truck, and I was just like, what? I don't think I've ever been this upset about anything so trivial, but sometimes it comes out of nowhere where I just like, I rack my brain going, do people not have lives? But yeah, that's kind of.
What's wrong with the truck? She hates trucks or something? Like she's picked up trucks?
Apparently, whatever I had to say should have waited until I was in an office. And
yeah,
how dare I?
Her criticism was that he had filmed it in the truck, not like while he's like speeding down the freeway, but that he had filmed it in his truck, and she took great offense to that. And there was a whole thread of
what the
like
fuck?
that you've got that's. I don't know.
You have to read it to believe it. The level of disdain was in there. I was just like, wow. Anyway,
there's got to. Sometimes I'll wonder, like, what is like. Sometimes you got to wonder, like, what is going on in these people's lives that make them that upset with just a guy on the internet giving his opinion.
Yeah.
You mentioned Halloween 2018. I got that with Halloween Kills because I put out a negative review of Halloween Kills, and oh my lord, that was where the death threats happened. It was for Halloween Kills. Like people were vehemently, the love for that movie was. I don't want to say there were people who were going to love that movie regardless, and if anybody said anything negative about it, oh my god, you're just. So yeah, that's really the only one that really sticks out to me. I've had, I didn't like Maxine, so I kind of thought maybe I'll get some negative feedback about that one, but no. But Halloween Kills, yeah, I didn't like Halloween Kills, and so therefore I deserved to die.
Yep, Halloween 2018 was that one for me. That was my first taste of the worst side of the internet, and it was overwhelming. It went on for weeks, and I was just like, man, I don't know. Like that was the first time where I kind of started to question whether I need to be doing this. I mean, when you have somebody tell me that you should have aborted your newborn kid because that's something that, it's been how many years, and that comment still is burned into my brain.
Damn.
Yeah. And there's one of few that burn. Usually I can get past them very quickly, but you'll be amazed at how horrid people can be when they're behind a computer and an avatar.
There was one guy. I never told you this, Rambo. There was a guy who messaged me, and he said, you disliked a movie that Rambo liked. And he took that as an attack against you. And he said, Rambo is a friend of mine. And so he threatened me because I disliked a movie that you liked. And he took that as an attack against you personally.
It was Alien 3, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. He was like, I and because I attacked you, I was attacking him because he liked you, and he wanted to hurt me because of that.
I'm assuming you didn't tell me because I would have tried to find that person. What the
it was one where I just went, okay, so there's that person out there, block, and I'm moving on. So, but yeah, that was a wild one. That was many years ago, though, Rambo. That was many years ago.
It's always an amazing thing to me is how some people out there interpret a different opinion as like a personal attack.
Yes.
Like for me, why else are we here other than to share our different opinions and talk about it and figure out why we watched the same movie, but you walked away with something totally different? Like if we just all agreed on everything and just every day we got on the internet and just talked about like 100% agree. I thought the same thing. Like how boring would life be?
How boring.
And I've just never once clicked on a video wanting validation. Like to me, it's more fascinating when somebody disagrees, like especially if I really disagree. If I really disliked something and somebody that I know and respect loved it, I'm like, that's a fascinating conversation I want to have. Versus if we all walk into a film and we're like, yeah, it was good. Like that's kind of where the interest dies. It's like, okay, we all agreed.
Yeah.
Moving on.
I think unfortunately we live in a time where, and it's not just with opinions on movies, with everything. If you don't see completely eye to eye with me 100%, then I hate you and you deserve to die and you're an ist, you're a phobe, and that just translates translates across everything these days. It's a crazy way to see the world. So I don't know. Yeah. Cody, you mentioned the grind. And you're somebody who puts a lot of work into your channel. You're definitely, and look, YouTube is a hungry machine. The algorithm wants to be fed. And if you stop feeding it for a little while, the algorithm's not happy with you. So Rambo YouTube, you're constantly putting out a lot of content out there. When it comes to the grind, how do you balance, Cody, I know you said you've got, family, you got a wife, you're close with your father, whatnot. How do you balance the personal life with the YouTube life?
Sometimes it's hard to. The past 2 weeks have been rough because I've had so much happen and so much that I've been trying to get out. I've had a lot of sponsorships. We've had a number of big horror releases in July. So those, I have a lot of follow-up videos with those. I mean, even this weekend, I imagined I was just going to review M. Night Shyamalan's new film, Trap, and be done with it. Review takes off, conversations rampant everywhere. I'm like, well, I better do a follow-up video. So I do a spoiler review. And then, well, I better do a ranking. So that video just dropped. And so it's there's a bit of unpredictability to it. But for the most part, what I try to do, I have a calendar to my right, a little digital calendar that syncs with my phone, where I try to plan out my month a month ahead. So so here in the next day or so, I'll probably plan out September. I look at the new releases. I write the days down that I'm going to drop those reviews. I write the ideas down for like follow-up videos, be it a ranking or a spoiler review or top 10s or whatever. Pop in a couple other random ideas, like one of those hidden gem movie reviews, and then also try to assign the sponsors that I already know that I have to which videos I think they'll fit with, or which videos will be successful enough to merit a sponsorship. And then I just try to work with that schedule where if I know I have 4 videos I have to do this week, if I'm able to, I try to record 2 or 3 of them in a batch recording. And that way I can at least get a break a couple of days where I'm not having to record, then sit down at the editing table, then publish the video. I can just sit down and edit 1 or 2 of them. Or, if there's a couple of shorter videos, I might try to knock out everything in one big long editing session. And so then I get a couple of days off. Or, especially with school starting here very soon, I usually try to make it where I try to knock out some of that work during the daytime, pick up my daughter, get the homework done, finish things. So by the time my wife gets home, work's done, do dinner, hang out, get whatever little time we need to. So I've been doing it long enough, and for the longest time, previous to 3 years ago when I went full time, where I was working 50, 60 hours a week, then doing what I just described, where, now that I'm a full-time YouTuber, I'm able to kind of roll with the punches a little bit better, and I can anticipate them. And I'm able to kind of warn my wife a little bit, like, this week's going to suck. You're not going to see me much, so it's 8 years into it. I've kind of gotten used to it a little bit.
Yeah. And, I think having a supportive partner there is you can't put a price tag on that.
Oh no, she's the reason why I'm full time, because I mean, she always encouraged me. She's not nearly in the movies as me, so it never really completely clicked what my appeal was to do this. But as she saw the numbers roll in like me, she's like, oh wow, okay, you're doing something right. But yeah, I got to a point where the job that I left was so miserable towards the end, where I was kind of turned into a shell, where I was just depressed, going to bed, waking up angry, taking out work frustrations on family. And the time that I was home, I just wanted to be in a room by myself and didn't want anybody around me. And that went on for long enough where my wife, like, in the back of my head, I was kind of prepping this conversation. I was like, I know I need to change something. But especially when you're a husband and a father, it's like every major change is terrifying because it affects not just you. So I'm sitting here trying to kind of figure out, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to make this much money? Am I going to make this much money? Do I have to get 2 jobs? Like, all these things are rolling through. And in the back of my head, I always knew, like, this is the time I need to really try to dive into YouTube. Like, the numbers are there, and I'm only being able to dedicate this much of myself to it. If I can dedicate all myself to it, what could that even be? But I was afraid of what she would think, because as much as it's a business decision, I'm reading it as, honey, do you mind if I quit my job so that I can watch movies and talk about it all day long? And so I just picture that conversation for like a week as I'm trying to prep it in my head. And then one day my wife just basically tells me, she's like, just quit this job, like, and do YouTube. That's what you need to do. And I was like, well, if you say so. I mean, it was your idea if it fails. You know?
It's on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Twist my arm.
And, you know, I'm very lucky that, you know, I have a very supportive girlfriend who, you know, she'll joke with me sometimes, oh, you'd rather do those videos. But then she'll be like, well, you should do this. Here, try this video, do that video. She starts throwing all these ideas out at me, or she'll be like, you know, let me film you doing this, or let me, you know, so, but having a supportive person there in your life who understands, like, you know, it's, who understands that sometimes you can be spread a little thin.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You're still very much a priority in my life. Don't get it wrong, but this is something that's important to me also. And it, you know, it's something that I love to do. And it's, you know, yeah, you make a little coin doing it as well, which is not bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a really positive impact on people's lives. So you can't put a price on having that kind of supportive, that support system when you're doing this.
100%.
Yeah. How do you balance things, Matt?
A lot of caffeine. Really, like Cody said, scheduling. Scheduling is very important. Also, I live in the middle of nowhere, Texas. There's nothing to do out here unless you want to go outside in 110-degree weather and become a French fry.
Yeah.
Or something. Survive the rain. Or, you know, once in a blue moon, a deep freeze, all of a sudden, like the Arctic. Really, yeah, scheduling. And also just getting that mindset of being committed and being like, okay, what am I going to do today? Follow it. And then if you follow this, and this, then, okay, after this many days, this day will be a day off, or this day you could do this. And when you follow that, it becomes more and more smooth sailing, at least for me. And they just set on that schedule. It worked wonders. And sometimes you just have to. That's the thing with people out there, like, if you're going to start a channel, don't give up. I think that's the biggest thing a lot of people do is that they're in it for a month or 2 months or a year, and then they give up. And it's like, you give up if you need to, you give up if you want to, but man, if you're able to do it, keep going, because you never know. It could be 2 months, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, but something could happen, and then you hit that stride, and you'll be glad that you did not. You'll be glad that you chose that route. Now, I mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
To follow up on that, I always tell people, like, don't start YouTube to be a full-time YouTuber, or don't start YouTube to be, you know, to have it be a job or an income source. Like, do it for fun and learn while you're having fun. And if you're talented, if you're lucky enough, if the algorithm graces you, you'll be able to eventually get those things. But too many people I know, they come into it with the end goal being their short-term goal, and it's anything but. I mean, I did it for 5+ years, grinding constantly with a 60+ hour job and making a lot of mistakes along the way to get where I was. And there's certainly a bit of luck and everything that comes into all of that. But yeah, do it for fun. Otherwise, why are we here?
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of really big people with really big channels, and all of them say the same thing. Like, when somebody asks, how did you get so big? The one thing they've always the one thing that they all echo, and there's always the same thing, like, you know, work hard, blah, blah, blah. But luck. Luck is something that it's just, you know, you just hit the algorithm just right, and all of a sudden, like, oh my God, that video's got 50,000. Oh my God, now it's got 100. Oh my God, now it's got 250,000 views. Like, wow, how did that happen? You know? But the good segue into sort of tips for people who may be wanting to start out channels. My thing is always, like, you have to be ready. Like, and Cody, you mentioned it, people start with the end game in mind already. You know, you're going to start a channel. You're going to put a lot of work into that first video because you want it to be perfect. You know what I mean? Maybe you go out and you buy some equipment, you buy a nice microphone, you buy some lights, you buy a nice camera, some good editing software. You put a lot of time into it.
Suck.
Well, not just that. Even if it's a good video, you're going to put that video out there and nobody's going to watch it. You're not going to get a lot of views on it. I've seen so many people who have started channels. Their first few videos don't get any traction and they're just like, well, what's the point? I'm putting all this work in and there's no reward. Nobody's watching. But that's literally everybody starts out with 0 subscribers. And the way things are with YouTube, if you're like, you're the enemy when you're starting out with the algorithm doesn't know you. They think you're, there's no trust there yet. So you're not going to be recommended. You're not going to end up in searches. Just know, like, that's going to happen. You got to grind it out. You got to stick with it, and maybe you'll get lucky. But I see that happen so many times. That's the number one thing when people ask me, like, tips. It's like, you stick with it. You got to stick with it.
Yeah. To piggyback on what Cody said, I think for me personally, I was lucky on when I started, because that was when I started, that was before the Google thing. You couldn't make money or do all that stuff. It was just
same here.
Go on, and I worked a job just for fun and a hobby. I love talking about it. And then one after led, and then all of a sudden I'm looking back like, wow, that many people are watching. Okay, let me keep going. It's fun. And like Cody said, I mean, it's like a lot of things. People think all of a sudden it's going to be this career opportunity, and don't set yourself up to fail like that. Like Cody mentioned, do it because it's fun, because you're passionate and you're comfortable with it. Be yourself and be comfortable and have fun and see where it goes. Like I said, with a bit of luck, maybe something will happen, maybe nothing will happen, but at the very least, maybe you'll meet a couple friends along the way. And like some of my best friends I met because of YouTube. Whether it be the guys that did Pit, whether it be you, or Piz, and some friends like Mike and Effrey, like these people I mentioned, I met them because of YouTube, and became another family, which has been the most important part of this journey on YouTube, with me over here, the little neck of the woods of the pond, the big ocean of YouTube. And it's been a fun ride so far. And that's the thing, is be sensible, like everything else. Have your job, do it for fun. I guess what I meant by don't give up is that, like you were saying, Piz, if the 3-4 videos, okay, it's not going to be automatic. Maybe with luck, but hey, you're passionate about something today, you film something, maybe it's once a week, maybe it's twice a week, maybe then if you get the excitement for it, keep going, maintain your life like anyone should. And when I say don't give up, like, do it where you're comfortable and do it where it's not hurting your life itself, but don't get discouraged too easily. Sometimes things take time, so it's not always, very rarely it's an overnight sensation, very very rarely. So,
well, Cody, I'd mentioned earlier, you've got a channel with over 150,000 subscribers. To what do you owe your success? What do you think are some of the reasons behind your success?
Sold my soul. But no, it's I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, like you said, you start off, and I started just because it's like I wanted to get my voice out there. Like I wanted to join in on these conversations that I was listening to, and that was my way of doing it. And then I started to have fun with it. And when you're first starting off, unless you're already a experienced video editor and with cameras and everything like that, there's a big learning curve. And that's the hardest hurdle it was for me to get over, was not spending 9 hours on a video that 3 people were going to watch. And so, like, to your point about, you're working really hard on your first video, something that no matter who you are, no matter how good the video objectively is, you're going to look back on that at some point and think, man, those early videos are terrible. And so, don't take it all that seriously. And I used to do that where I would film something. And when I was off doing my little construction job, if I was going to be on a job site all day, I would sit there and edit off to the side when I wasn't physically doing something. And I would put 8-9 hours into a video sometimes. And, 4 people would watch it. 3 of them were my parents. So that was a big learning curve that I had to get over, is figuring out how to get quicker about the video editing and everything. And, there is the luck in there. There's also a good bit of strategy. So early on, I think it's about kind of finding your voice, figuring out your style, figuring out how you're going to be different more than anything, because, you do want to kind of start off emulating people, but you want to figure out how you're going to stand out amongst all of those. Because if you come in just being what everybody else is, well, you're just competing with them, and you're not really having much of an appeal for why people should click you and not their channels, the ones that are already, established. So part of it's finding your own voice. And I think for me, my personality, luckily, which is the easiest thing to have, really made me stand out. It wasn't fancy editing or like fancy backdrops or everything like that, even though I tried to do that as well. It was just me, my attitude, my humor, things like that. And then the strategy comes in where, you start to see what works after a while. You start to see what people kind of resonate with, whether it's horror reviews or your rankings or top 10s or live streams or whatever it is. And you kind of try to figure out why. Like, what is it about this that people really latch into that's not so appealing with the other stuff? And you can either study that to a way where you kind of try to reverse engineer it. Like, I really want people to watch this, so I need to figure out how to get that appeal over here. Or you can just kind of double, triple down on what works. And as far as what we do with movies, the strategy was always kind of figuring out what movies are coming out, what movies you think are going to be big conversation starters, and how you're going to attack that. So like one of the first videos that really got a lot of traction for me was Rob Zombie's 31. And the reason why was because it was this Fathom event that very few people were going to go to, and so therefore very few videos were going to be on YouTube. So we actually had a hurricane coming in that night, and I still drove 45 minutes to the theater to get that movie scene to come back to try to get a leg up on everybody. Don't do that. But so things like that, where you try to kind of anticipate moves where maybe you can get above the algorithm a little bit. Like my video is going to be one of 3 videos if they search this, so it doesn't matter that I have 100 subscribers. And then suddenly those numbers start to grow. And eventually you get to a point where within reason, depending on how serious you want to take it and how far you want to take it, you start treating it like a job. I would go to work, I would come home, but I never felt like work was over. I felt like, okay, time to clock in on YouTube and get some stuff done. And something that I always tell people that's kind of more of an entrepreneurial advice, but it does apply to YouTube, is, if you're seriously trying to build something like that, never go to bed without having done at least one thing for yourself. Too often people get drained by punching a clock for somebody else's company or doing whatever. They come home, they're exhausted, they're mentally drained, and they just got nothing left. Especially if you have a family, you give whatever little bit is left to them, you hit the bed, you're done. And then the alarm clock comes and you start all over again. Never go to bed without sending an email, writing a page of notes, reaching out to somebody, editing a video, shooting a video, whatever it is. Do one thing for yourself before you go to sleep. Don't give everything you have to others.
Very wise. Very wise. Yes. And, I had a pretty good milestone. I reached 60,000 subscribers recently, and I wasn't even, thank you. I wasn't even going to really post about it or say anything about it, because, something that probably this has happened to probably more established channels is, when you get into, you can really, the analytics can play tricks with your mind, because, some months you're up and you're on top of the world and you're like, hey, I'm a star. And then the next month it's like, well, where'd everybody go? I suck. I probably should just shut it down.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's always been and numbers are great. Don't get me wrong. Numbers are great. But what I want to do ultimately is just put out the best quality content that I can, that will have a positive impact on people.
Mm-hmm.
And, just hope that people watch it and that it does have a positive impact on them. With horror channels, we're coming upon the Halloween season, always in September, October, like my channel, those analytics go up, you know what I mean?
yeah.
More people are watching horror content. So, it's like, hey, I'm a big shot over here. And then, January, February, it's just cratered.
You will never feel that more than when you go full time too. I about had a stroke.
No, and look, my hat is on. Like people have asked me, like, did you do this full time? It's like, no. But yeah, I can't. In somebody who is doing it full time, I imagine you do have to keep a little closer eye on those analytics and what's coming in and what's going out, and it's.
I went full time in September, knowing that big bump was coming. That was kind of a strategic move on my place. I was like, I can just hit the ground running now. I got Halloween Kills coming out. I can do 17 different videos off of that one movie, and there's others. Like, I'm going to kill it. And I absolutely did. And then January hits, and I called my buddy Sean Chandler, who's been full time even longer than I have, and he gave me a lot of advice and kind of definitely helped me with the decision making along the way. I called him. I was like, what's going on? And he's like, it happens every year. You're good. Just, bunker down. Don't spend too much. March, April, summer season, it'll start to go back up. But yeah, when I saw the estimated revenue, which we all see on our homepage, YouTube Studio, was just going.
Yeah.
I was just, no.
Yeah. So I think that would be my advice to people who've created something of a following. Is to not get too wrapped up in those analytics, because they will definitely mess with your head. You're either feasting or starving, and like, just don't get too wrapped up in those. And something else I would recommend to, especially people who are just starting, is to network. You know what I mean? There's a lot of channels out there who are on that same level. Reach out to them. Do these kind of live streams. You know what I mean? Network. Expose. If you've only got a small audience, they've only got a small audience. Expose them to each other. You know what I mean? Networking, I think, is a big thing for channels on the come up, as the kids say these days.
1000%.
So that's something I would recommend. Yeah.
That's something that was absolutely a big piece of when I was starting off too. You had me, my buddy Sean that I just mentioned, about 4 or 5 other channels that were all kind of really starting around the same time. And this is also where it's really important to kind of leave egos at the door. Sometimes I think people are afraid to network or afraid to kind of share the wealth, or even afraid to share information because they view people all as competition.
Right.
And something that was never an issue within these group of guys, some of which don't do YouTube anymore, some have, and then me and Sean have obviously kind of taken it to DEFCON 12. But I don't think any of them, even to this day, there would never be a point where one of us would learn something and feel hesitant about sharing it with the others. Hey, I tried this, it didn't work, don't do that. Or, hey, I tried this, it was awesome, maybe give that a shot. Then of course you have what you said about sharing each other's audiences to a certain degree too, and that really helps when you're not getting too many eyes on your channel. Somebody comes across their video, they recommend yours, now they found 2 channels instead of 1. There's tons of benefits to that, not the least of which Rambo touched on earlier, is just getting some really great friends. There's people that I've met on YouTube that I would have never interacted with in my entire life that are literally like on the level of family for me. And that's one of the biggest things that I value about what I've done here on YouTube.
Yeah. And that's something I admire about you, Cody, because I've seen you on as a guest on a lot of people's channels, and people with relatively small YouTube channels that you don't see. I don't want to pick on anybody, but you don't see Jeremy Johns on a lot of people's channels who have 20,000 subscribers.
That's something that's really important to me. So I'm glad that people notice it. I appreciate that, because I won't name names either. But it's one of the biggest frustrations that I've had as I've grown, and I've started to kind of break through these ceilings and suddenly start to feel like I'm peers with people that used to be like way out of reach, is that the vast majority of them, almost the entirety of them, once they get to a certain status, everybody below them is just, forgotten forever. And I don't like that mindset for a lot of reasons. I think that there's a lot of value to somebody like that has been as successful as I have, that has learned as much as I have, still kind of, hanging out with, the quote unquote little guys and showing up on their channel and giving them advice and being friends with them and everything, because, we're all kind of in this together and nobody ever did that for me. And how valuable that would have been, for one, just to kind of feel acknowledged, like, oh my God. And then on the other side of it, this person's helping me. He's helping me get through things that I would have taken 3 years to figure out the long way. And so I very much try to actively kind of be that change that I want to see. And what kind of kicked that off and I don't remember who did it, but it was something on Twitter, I think, where, this person had like 3 million subscribers. And they asked this person, what is a really underrated channel that you can recommend? And they said Dead Meat. And I'm like, the guy with 6 million subscribers? How's that underrated? And that just kind of, that in and of itself is this example that I always share, where it's like, when you reach a certain level, you only look out for your own. And for me, my own is everybody. So when people ask me underrated channels, I'm going to send them to, Sledgehammer Horror or Sweet and Spooky or Haunted Hippie, or, some of these channels that are, quote unquote up and comers, because they need more eyes than people that are on my level that are doing just fine, or people above me that are doing even better.
Yeah, right on. A personal question I want to ask both you guys. I mean, we talked about the grind and staying busy and, watching movies to review. Do you find time, or do you make time just to watch movies for entertainment, or do you find it difficult to do that?
That is the biggest casualty of going full time, and it doesn't get talked about enough. I need an awareness group. It, movies for the longest time, one of the reasons why I've been so close with them and I've loved them so much, they were always an escape for me. When life got hard, movies were always there, and they're very much a comfort food for me. Even the gnarliest slasher is a comfort food for me. And I really do struggle now to, not so much even to find time to kind of get my brain to get out of work mode, where I sit down, I have a couple of hours, and I'm thinking, like, what do I want to watch? And 9 times out of 10, when I go to like throw on something that I've loved, that I've seen 1,000 times, like, oh, let's throw on Tommy Boy or something like that, my brain always gets short circuited by, but if you watch this, you can get ahead for next week's video, and you can do this, and it always wins out. So it sounds crazy. I've had to like train myself to clock out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too. Yeah, I find myself watching the stuff that I need to review far more than, like, I'll put off the entertainment or like the comfort movies for the stuff I need to review. Because, I do work a full-time job. I have a younger brother who has special needs. So like my time is kind of compressed in a way. So I am trying to make more time for the comfort movie, or just the movies that, maybe it's just a movie that I'm blind watching on Shudder, and if it's really good, maybe I will talk about it or review it or whatnot, but just something to kick back and watch for entertainment's sake.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt? Do you have to set time aside for the entertainment watches?
Honestly, like, I don't watch a whole lot of movies. I really got more back into video games, funny enough, because a lot of times I'm watching or reviewing movies so much that when I have free time, I'm like, I'm gonna pop in a video game that I've never played before, or I'm gonna pop in a video game that I've never done or I've never thought of, and then because it's so different and so off the beaten path, it's like, in a weird way, that's just simple escapism compared to, I watch this movie like, maybe I should review this, or yeah, well, I could think about that, and that's a plot hole, and it's like, it's almost like my, it's very hard. It's very difficult. So, yeah, really, it's been either just even going on YouTube and watching people play video games or playing video games myself. That's been kind of what I'm more drawn towards, just on a casual, when I have casual time, to just free time, I should say. I know it's weird because maybe because I haven't played for so long, and it's like, oh, this was a part of my life when I was a kid too. So I'll go have more fun with that, and then the movie stuff will be more for the YouTube stuff. I know it sounds strange, but
as a follow-up to that, do either of you guys ever hit like this brain wall where you've watched things and you're trying to analyze it and prepare reviews and take notes in your head, and then eventually your brain just taps out?
yes,
I had that happen a couple of days ago watching Oddity, where it's 8-9 o'clock at night. I've had a hell of a month, and then watched so much, and then I'm interested in the movie, but my brain is just done. Like I tried to explain it of like, it's like the cinematic equivalent of overeating, where your stomach's like, stop. You know what I mean? I've had that happen a couple of times, which is a wild feeling, where you're watching a movie you're interested in, and all of a sudden your brain just like starts to drift off, and then you rewind it and start it again, and then your brain drifts off again.
Yeah. Or I'll have it where I'll be watching a movie that I'm going to review, and it's like I'm focusing too much on the review of reviewing the movie more than I am like kind of watching it to enjoy it. And I'll have to remember, like, just watch it. You know what I mean? Just watch it and enjoy it, and then you get to the review later. So yeah. Well, any before we take some, we've got some questions, just a few, but any final closing thoughts, any words of wisdom you could impart on anybody coming up on YouTube or anything, any wise words? Matt, go ahead.
Oh, don't do what I do. I think what we said before, if you're starting a channel, do it for the fun of it. Do it because you have passion. Do it because this is something you really enjoy doing. And hopefully luck and good fortune will follow. If not, then at least maybe you'll meet a couple friends that will stick with you for the rest of your life. And who knows how long we have on here. I think that's kind of where my mindset is. Whether it be a wise man once said, a man's got to know his limitations. I'm like, you know what? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm going to have fun as long as the ride is. And so far, it's been pretty good. And I can't complain. So for those out there, yes, your life, your work, all the necessaries have to be centered. Of course, you have to. But at the same time, life's short. Enjoy the ride as long as you can.
Yeah. And again, why I admired you, Rambo, is because you are unapologetically you. My advice would be yourself. Don't become a character. Don't put on airs. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Be yourself, because the people that you attract to your content are going to be your ride or dies. Whether you got a huge following or a smaller following, they're going to be with you to the end. People can sniff out fakeness.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Sometimes it takes them a few years, but they always catch on.
It'll catch up to you. It'll get you. What about you, Cody?
So I'll take what Rambo said, and I'll go in a different direction with it. So about having fun, never lose sight of the fun, which is the difficult part the longer you do this. Hopefully you started it for fun, but whether it's the business side of it, whether it's the work that goes into it, whether it's the troll comments, whether it's the analytics really looking down for a change, like, don't ignore it, but always try to focus on why you're doing this, why you started it. And it gets harder to maintain that the longer you do it, the more successful you get. Even when you get to 150K and you're very much knowledgeable at this point of what the algorithm wants and what people want to click on, but might not necessarily be the video you're that passionate about. Always balance it, which is what I try to do as much as I can. Do one for them, do one for you. Try to blend it as much as you can. And as long as you always maintain the fun of it, why you enjoyed it, then you'll always enjoy the ride. You don't want to become one of those channels that lack of a better word, kind of sells your soul and sells out and just does whatever the algorithm wants, or, you know, post 65 videos about why Brie Larson sucks or something like that, when you know they're not that passionate about it.
Right.
So
I've seen those.
always
I've seen those on.
yeah, never lose sight of the fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do have some questions here from some folks. I'll get those out here. Dave Parker, my old buddy Dave Parker, he wants to know, do you find longer videos or shorter ones better for views? What do you think, Cody?
I've always succeeded with longer form videos. There's not necessarily a you know, equation for it, but you know, early on people really encouraged shorter videos because people had shorter attention spans, and I'm a long form talker. When I review a film, you're lucky if you're getting out of there in 12 minutes because I have a lot to say. And I've been lucky enough to where I at least I'm either people enjoy the longer form stuff, have found my channel, or I'm just entertaining enough where 12 minutes goes by quickly, where the longer form videos work well. And, you know, and now we're in this time with TikTok and YouTube shorts where you're encouraged even more, you know, get everything you want to say out in 60 seconds.
Exactly.
And I've very much resisted that. You know, I haven't really dove into the shorts and everything yet, and I'm doing just fine. So it's whatever you want to do, really. Some people really succeed with the short form content, but I succeed with the longer form.
And I think, you know, I know for a while YouTube was really pushing the longer content because they wanted that engagement time. Engagement time looks good to
and
stockholders and more ads. Exactly. And then they sort of came, they want to push shorts because they want to compete with TikTok and Instagram and whatnot. So I think it seems like there's a bit of a balancing act. Like my shorts, it's odd. Like I'll put one out and like, oh, it got 10,000 views, and then I'll put one out the next day and oh, it got 200 views. Like, it's odd. I don't, you know, it didn't quite hit the algorithm the same way, I guess. But I think
that I'm nervous about, and why I've always resisted it, is that I know that people that like long form content, people that like short form content, are not typically the same people.
Right.
And so I fear diving headfirst into YouTube Shorts, which is what YouTube wanted you to do a year ago. Just, you know, start going bananas with this. I fear getting a lot of subscribers out of those videos, and now suddenly I have two different audiences that are competing, and the algorithm's not going to know how to sort that data, because these people aren't showing up for the longer videos and these people aren't showing up for the short videos, and YouTube's like, do you just suck at both? I don't know what's going on here. And so I very much am afraid of trying to be a jack of all trades when I know that the audiences don't do that.
Yeah. I think YouTube, to answer the question, I think YouTube shines more of a light on the longer form content, the longer videos. And those tend to do better for me as well than the shorter ones. And that could be because YouTube's pushing them out more than the shorter ones. But I think, like, I also do Instagram and TikTok. And so I've kind of started putting more of the shorter stuff on there, specifically to those platforms, as opposed to YouTube. So I hope that answered your question, Dave. Thank you very much. We do have another OG here watching us tonight. We got Christian in the chat giving Rambo some props.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that $4.99, Christian. I appreciate that.
Although, Christian, you never had me on your damn channel yet. I'm so awesome.
He's calling you out. He's calling you out, Christian. You better get him on there, man.
Sincerely,
put your money where your mouth is.
Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. You do a good job as well. Yeah. Thank you, man.
Let's see. What else have we got here? My buddy Swaggy wants to know, Cody, what kind of shampoo do you use? Your hair looks shiny and healthy.
The tears of unicorns. What is it? I use Head and Shoulders because unfortunately my gene pool is prone to dry scalp. So when I try to use other brands, eventually I'll start to get a little flaky. And so I always had to use Head and Shoulders. As far as conditioner, I'm not really a loyalist. Some of it's just natural God-given talent, I guess.
There you go. Let's see what else have we got here in the question section. Let's see. David Diggs says, what are suggestions for beginners trying to stand out among the 1 million and one other movie review channels? I think we kind of covered that.
Show a little nipple.
Nipples. Show nipples. There you go. That'll get you some eyes. That'll get some eyes on your content. That's for sure. I think we pretty much covered that, David, but thank you for that question. Marcy, and that is Denmark currency. Thank you for the 17 whatever 17. He wants to know what thoughts on the Dr. Doom casting situation. Robert Downey Jr. is back in the MCU, but not as Iron Man. He is Dr. Doom now. What do you guys think about that?
My immediate reaction was disappointment, and it felt desperate. I love Robert Downey Jr. I love his work in the MCU. I'm sure he's going to kill it as Dr. Doom, but to me, that makes the character more about the casting than the character.
I feel exactly the same way. When I saw that, I said, these guys are desperate. They are desperate to get people back interested in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's funny. I was just going to say the word desperation. I mean, you're paying a guy $80 million. You doing it for a certain reason.
That's the crazy thing. Like, I couldn't really discern whether they were where they were reporting these numbers as combined for both films or just one. But just to pay Robert Downey Jr. and the Russo brothers is over $160 million. And there's a reported 60 plus characters that are going to be showing up in here, most of which are A-list characters. So like, how much are these movies going to cost?
Well, and you can guarantee too that like Robert Downey Jr. is getting that, first dollar gross on the back end too. So he's, I don't blame him for coming back. You offer me 80 million, I'll do a lot. But
yeah, he won his Oscar. He's like, I got an approved now. Yeah, I'll come back and be Iron Man.
He's like, y'all are gonna look dumb, not me. I've got $80 million. So, but yeah, it just reeked of desperation to me. Yeah. So, Marcy also wants to know, what would be your guys' favorite actor and actress?
I've never really had a number one favorite. I could just list off a whole bunch of names for different reasons. I mean, as a kid, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then I kind of went into a Adam Sandler era, and then then Denzel Washington was my number one, and then Tom Hardy was my number one, and so I've never really had a number one, to be honest with you. It's that's probably one of the most hard pick your favorite questions you could ask me.
I think for me, it was always Sylvester Stallone, because as a kid who had trouble speaking, and then with his face having been paralyzed when he was a baby, I could relate to having the idea of having to act with that kind of impediment and really appreciate it, and how I can enjoy his action, but at the same time, I love Copland. I love his performance at the end of First Blood, and I think he did give some really good performances. So, and just as a guy that grew up with his films in the 80s and 90s, it just really was prevalent in my childhood. So I would say Stallone. An actress.
Oh yeah, actress. Linda Hamilton or Sigourney Weaver probably be in my top three. So either one of those.
I would say Sandra Bullock. I always enjoyed it, whether it be, I forget what the recent film she did. She was I think she was a drug addict or something that happened. Yeah, I forget what the movie was called, but Gravity, I really enjoyed. The Blind Side, Speed, Demolition Man. So I always liked her, whether it been comedy or drama. So probably Sandra Bullock for me. Although I love Sigourney Weaver and Linda Hamilton and the like.
Some newer ones for me would be Emily Blunt and maybe like Rebecca Ferguson. Done some really cool stuff. Rose the Hat.
Yeah.
I think my favorite actor would probably be Gary Oldman, because that dude can play anything. He can play Dracula. He can play a white guy, a white pimp who thinks he's black. He can play Beethoven. He can play Sid Vicious. He can do anything. He can play Lee Harvey Oswald. He's done it all. He's a tremendous actor, I think. I just love like hearing his interviews. I love his interviews too when he talks about those movies. But so Gary Oldman definitely comes to mind as like a way up there for me. As far as actress, ooh gosh, the first one that came to mind was Patricia Arquette, because I was thinking True Romance. So I'll give it to Patricia Arquette there. Let's see here. Gavin, let's settle this, gentlemen. Bill Paxton or Michael Biehn?
Bill Paxton.
Paxton.
Easy for me. I love Michael Biehn, though.
That's tough. Might as well. I can't answer. It's tough for me because I love Paxton, but Biehn, I love the character of Hitch so much.
Michael Biehn didn't direct Frailty. Just saying.
It's true.
That's true. I go with Paxton. I love Twister, Predator 2. I mentioned Frailty is a great movie. I love that one, and True Lies he's a hilarious guy. In True Lies.
Yeah.
Weird Science.
Yeah.
What a resume for Paxton. I mean, it's so, and he's one too. Like every time I think like, oh, he's gone, like, oh, it just kind of hits you right in the gut. Like, yeah, he's not around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sucks.
And over BS reasons too. Like that could have been easily those doctors. That whole thing just makes me bad.
Yeah. There's a good interview with Michael Biehn where he talks about it, and he was like, he goes, they butchered him. He didn't go into detail, but he was like, they butchered him.
Yeah.
So, let's see here. Colin Rumig wants to know, what are your thoughts on Cemetery Man? And Cody, you mentioned that you're going to start getting into Italian horror. I envy you because there's so much great Italian horror out there. And Cemetery Man, aka Della Morte dell'Amore, is definitely one that should be on your list. I think that's a brilliant movie. I love it. I've got there went everything, but I got the little snow globe. So yeah, that's a great movie. Great movie.
Very cool.
Matt, have you seen Cemetery Man?
I did, but it's been so long I don't remember it. I just remember the snow globe, which I won't spoil.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since I've seen it. I'd have to rewatch it again for a better opinion.
But I'm looking forward to seeing some of your thoughts on Italian horror, Cody. You've got some.
I'm overdue for it. I had a really rough start about maybe 5 or 6 years ago where I was in a Facebook group and suddenly like Giallo was the flavor of the month. So I was like, I guess I better watch some Giallo movies. And the 3 that I picked were not good introductions. And so I just exhausted myself and I haven't gone back since.
Yeah. Well, let's go through the super chats here and then we'll call it a night. Bobby Reynolds, thank you for the $10 super chat. I appreciate it. Pizzowell grabbed his microphone and said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the talk of the century. In this corner is Matt and the other Cody. Give the good talk. There you go. Yeah. Thank you, sir. The Goosebumps crew, thank you for the $4.99. As a kid, I couldn't get enough of the Scooby-Doo direct-to-DVD films. It's what sparked my interest of horror that Goosebumps would throw gas on. Haha. Very cool. Thank you. Gold Standard, thank you for the $5. I think he means, do you guys like the Descent movie? Yes, I love the Descent. Great movie.
Very much.
Yes.
Yeah, not the sequel.
I know I've seen it, but I don't remember a thing about it.
That sequel, the cave my room is darker than that cave. And there's like a scene where a monster drops his trowel and takes a dump on the lead characters.
I do remember that part though. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So
I remember that part.
When that's your memorable moment,
do you like the theatrical ending better, or do you like the director's cut ending better?
The one that's more grim, where that's the director's cut, correct? The director's cut. Yeah, that one.
I agree. That I like that one better too. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite, Matt?
I like both. I could watch either one. I don't really have a favorite, but I guess if you had the grim ending, then we wouldn't have Descent Part 2. So maybe I should like the grim ending more.
There you go. Tony Movie Chappie D9 Neil Blomkamp fan, thank you for the $1.99. He says Alien 3, the assembly cut, is his favorite Alien film. Okay, interesting.
Stop it, Tony. Stop it.
Thank you, Ice Cold Juice, for gifting 1 membership. I appreciate that. We did those with Marcy. Thank you, Christian, for the $4.99. That's very kind of you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Gavin, for the $4.99. And what the heck, Marcy, thank you for the 89 DKK, the 17 DKK, and the additional 17 DKK. Very kind of you. So just in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know where to find you guys on social media, Matt, where can we find you on social media?
On YouTube, it's one name, Ramboraph4life. And yeah, I'm on Facebook as well. My name is Matt. Nice to meet you, or anyone who comes by. And yeah, pretty much find me on there. How about you, Cody? I mean,
Yeah,
come on,
where
people
we
know
find
who
you,
Cody
Cody?
is, but
Well, just in case.
Yeah, easy to find. Just search my name, Cody Leach, Leach. I should be the first 20,000 results or whatever. How many? It feels like I've made that many videos. I'm sure it's not nearly as much. But yeah, you can find me there on YouTube. I also have a gaming channel where I'm not anywhere near as active on it. It's been a very slow year for video games, but it's called Cody Leach Game Chamber. And Twitter, Instagram, and mostly other places, I've tried to have it all branded as Cody Leach YT with the YT in all caps. So you should be able to find me there. Plenty of entertainment to be had on my Twitter page. So,
and after the stream is archived, I'll put links just in case to everybody, to Matt and to Cody's channels in the description and in the pinned comment, just in case. So, but Matt, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you,
Cody.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, finish. Please finish.
I would say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you, Cody.
You as well.
And Cody, thank you. I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the invite. It was fun.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody who hung out with us. And yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you all again. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you again real soon. Until next time, peace.